YouTube and look at women who are happy. Like, that's not an answer to fucking anything. That's basically like, look at what the algorithm fed me.
First
it
of
said
all,
this, so I'm gonna believe the algorithm.
Yeah, okay,
like, please.
So do you want me to pull up statistics on the dissatisfaction rate of divorcees?
Yeah, there's like a study that shows that
Absolutely.
40 to 50% of divorcees have regret after. And
yeah, but I thought you guys all agreed earlier that men would have more responsibility because the outcome is greater.
Yes, but I'm talking speaking
legally,
specifically to justice. Speaking specifically to justice.
I understand, but the justice is going to be applied to the outcome, right? So you can't separate the two. Justice is about the outcome.
Microevolution is better understood through an epigenetic lens, and what I'm telling you is that epigenetics are fundamental to understanding how species in a couple of decades can change, for example, their endocrine system. That's crazy. It's really impressive, and your understanding of evolution is wrong. And
so hang on. Let's back up to the epigenetic argument that you're kind of putting forward.
We're going to go through intros real quick, and then we will introduce the first topic. So we're going to start with Phil, K.O.E. Introduce yourself, sir.
Well, thank you, sir. Folks, it is I, the man of the hour, the man with the power, the man makes the other podcast cower, the prince and potentate of the political parlance, and one damn handsome man, if I do say so myself, your king of extreme, Phil K.O.E. You can, of course, find me at K.O.E Nation on YouTube, TikTok, Twitch, and now Twitter. Yes, that is K.O.E Nation, folks. The place for you, the place for me, the place for all in God's sundry. K.O.E Nation, YouTube, TikTok, and Twitch, and Twitter. God bless. Travel well, folks.
Awesome. NevTheRobot, introduce yourself, please.
Hey guys, my name's Nev. I'm low-key kind of retarded. You can find me on Instagram and Twitch. Both are at NevTheRobot. Thank you. I'm streaming from Japan.
Yeah, nice. Where in Japan are you? Are you behind somebody's house right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm in Harajuku right now, the fashion district.
All right, SpeakeaZy, introduce yourself, sir.
All right, I'm SpeakeaZy. I go Escape with SpeakeaZy on YouTube. I am SpeakeaZy on everything else. I make music. I do red pill content. I do debates, breakdowns on reaction shit, a little bit of everything. That's
awesome.
About it.
Appreciate it, man. Andrew Wilson.
Yeah, my name is Andrew Wilson. That's ANDREW. You can find me on YouTube on the channel The Crucible, one of the best channels that's ever been made in the history of all of mankind. Make sure you check it out, everybody. Can't wait to be here. I can't wait to get into this tonight.
Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. Thank you, Andrew.
NotSoErudite. Thank you for joining us. Introduce yourself real quick.
I'm not so erudite. I can't actually spell my name because I'm not very smart. So, do your best with what you can. And
Awesome. Appreciate it. Pxie.
Hi, I'm Pxie. You can find me on Twitch or Kick, Pxie, and you can find me on Instagram or Twitter, PXIELOVE, Pxie Love. Thank you for having me on.
Awesome. Thank you for being here. Playing with Fire.
Yeah, my name is Alex. I'm a hardcore feminist. My goal is to get rid of these misogynistic pickup artists who are giving all kinds of horrible dating advice. But if you do want to find one of these misogynistic pickup artists so they can actually help you get laid or be a girlfriend, be a better man, you should go to playingwithfire.com.
Awesome. And then Angela Knight, the MLD killer. Thank you for joining us. Introduce yourself, please.
Hello, my name is Angela Knight. I'm not the brightest Asian in the world, and I do some streaming on YouTube, and you can find me on there and Twitter and Instagram.
Awesome. Well done, everybody. So real quick, I'll just kind of outline the rules why we call this the shootout. So everybody has a shootout pass. It's totally innovative. Nobody's ever done this before. I totally came up with this idea myself. So it's the first time you will ever see this ever. This is called the shootout. So everybody has a shootout pass. At any point during the panel, they can just yell shootout out, not during intros, but during the free-for-alls. Everybody gets one shootout pass for the entire panel. So not per topic. For the entire panel, they get one shootout pass, meaning that at any point they can yell shootout and everybody else will drop off the screen except for them and one other person and me, the moderator. And then they will be able to have a 3-minute back and forth where they get to debate the issue without any other interruption from anybody else. That is why it's called the shootout. Then on top of that, we have one other rule, that there is a forbidden phrase, and that forbidden phrase is people can do whatever they want. So if anybody says people can do whatever they want, they will get muted for 5 minutes. So those are the rules. we're going to go ahead and start off with our first topic. And the first topic question is, are there benefits to gender roles in a relationship? And should we encourage or discourage those differences? So we're going to go ahead, same order we went in for the, well, I guess we'll go top to bottom. So Phil, if you'll kick us off with the first topic. Thank you.
Well, are there benefits to the gender roles within a relationship? You know, folks, to be frank, there really is one pretty central benefit, and that is your relationship working in a longer term than just a simple 6-8 months. In both instances, if I were to distill the gender roles of both sexes in a relationship into one word, for a man, it would be provide. For a woman, it would be nurture. Those are the most basic things that need to be brought forward in a relationship for it to work out long term. And I've been everywhere in that particular regard. So I've seen how that actually works out in the end. So protect and nurture. It's just like the Gus Fring speech in Breaking Bad. A man protects and provides whether he is appreciated, understood, or even loved. And so the benefit is in the long term, your relationship will end up working out for at least something longer than a few months. And so in my opinion, yes, there are good benefits, and it is something that both people need to bring to a relationship. Can you protect? Can you provide as a man? And when I say nurture, I don't just mean the idea of like nurturing a child, even though that's
Try to wrap it up, Phil.
Nurturing the ideas, nurturing the very bonds of the relationship. And folks, the often imitated, never duplicated Phil K.O.E. yields to you beautiful people.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I think I mentioned this earlier, but try to keep it to 1 minute. SpeakeaZy, go ahead with your intro.
Okay. So yes, I'll just keep it quick and simple. Yes, I do think there's benefits to gender roles in relationships. And I think the roles aren't enforced by society. They're encouraged by the bait that you want to catch, the fish you want to eat.
Nice. Okay, cool. Pxie, go ahead.
So I think that it basically depends on the individual couples. Some people are very happy to have like a gendered structured life. Some other people are more happy to be likely by just being able to choose and take from these roles. I think they should not be super strictly enforced. I think basically that people should have the freedom to not feel like they have to be just confined to like this very specific box. But I think that if these roles make you happy, then in general, you should be in them. And if they don't make you happy, then find a partner who agrees with that flexibility.
Awesome. NotSoErudite.
Sure. Yeah. Gender roles are fine. I think in general, relationships will just fall into different roles. And I think that the roles should be separated into basically playing to each partner's strengths. I think encouraging gender roles is going to super depend on like which gender roles we're encouraging, how rigid they are, and if the gender roles are like actually responsive to the sociological and technological landscape that the relationship exists within.
Awesome. BPF.
I think that due to evolution, when we're looking at evolution, we can clearly see, and it's very important that we all see, that there's a pattern over 1 million years, and that 1 million years created these gender roles, and those gender roles are super important to the rearing of children and the rearing of family. Let's make sure that we never forget about that because it's super important. By the way, I still kind of feel like everybody should kind of be able to do what they want, Tom.
Alex, go ahead.
Yeah, so if you care about being attracted to your partner, then yes, they do matter. There was a famous study that was done a while back where they compared different types of couples. One of the couples, the guy had a traditional male gender role, the other one doesn't. Guess who had more sex? Obviously, the couple where the guy was in the masculine gender role. Sexual polarity is what's most attractive. Most men want a feminine woman. In the same token, women generally find masculine men more attractive. Enforcing it just like going to the gym. It should be encouraged, but no one should be forced or shamed because they decide not to work out. And if someone is like, hey, you know, this is what it is, I don't care, then that's fine. That's the prerogative.
All right. And then Angela Knight.
Yeah, I think we should acknowledge the traditional gender roles that did exist back in the days, but we do live in modern society, and it's also important to evolve and recognize how we could complement them into our lives and what roles we all play in our relationships in order for us to thrive. I don't think it's as black and white as it used to be, but we should definitely still recognize the core of it.
Awesome. All right, we're going to try to put about 30 minutes on this one. This is the shorter topic that we have. The other two should be about 45 minutes. But if we want to open it up, Pxie, do you want to start off and go ahead?
Do I have to start off?
You don't have to, no. Does somebody else want
do
to
you want me
start
to
off?
play a hardcore feminist and I can like steal me on the other position?
Sweet.
Dude, why are you such a misogynist?
No, okay. I just I don't know. I feel like when it comes to like a lot of these things, people want to see them in like a really like black and white way. I don't know who here feels that way. I'm just talking about in general. And I think that if you try to hone into something too hard, if you're like, no, men must only act this way and women must only act this way, then you do end up in situations where people feel like constrained and feel like, okay, there's so much pressure to live into this like exact role. And I don't know if that's necessarily healthy, but that doesn't necessarily mean that like having a role at all is bad. Does that make sense?
So you don't have a position.
No, I do have a position.
Well, what's the actual position?
Yeah, my position my position is to let people do what they want.
Son of a biscuit.
Wait.
Sounds about right.
It wasn't the exact quote, so she's still
I
okay.
have a question for Phil. Okay, I have a question for Phil.
Ooh.
Okay, you outlined that basically gender dynamics are the main thing that lead to longevity. I'd be curious if you agree with me though. Do you think that longevity is the thing that matters most for let's say a monogamous relationship?
That's kind of how you measure whether it worked out or not. Till death do you part.
Sure. So I guess.
I mean, like, how else do you measure it? I'm curious. How would you measure it otherwise?
Sure. I'm curious if you think that like the health of the relationship matters, not just the longevity, because I'm sure you could agree there are couples that sometimes end up staying together and kind of gritting and bearing through it, even though their relationship is really, really unhealthy. It's maybe not abusive, but it's really unhealthy. There's lots of tension. They definitely.
Hey, their feelings of codependence are just as valid as other people's feelings of actual love. Okay, that's their thing. That's their shit. Okay, but like no, like if it actually does work out in the end, guess what? No relationship's going to be perfect. No one's going to be like, you know what? You were just perfect the entire way through. Nary a wave in the water, everything. You were cool, level-headed. Everything was perfect the whole way until your dying day. Said no one ever at the end of their life in any relationship ever. So the idea that like, yeah, there's going to be ups and downs in any relationship, but if you can actually make it to that till death do you part, it's successful.
Yeah, so I'm not asking about perfection of relationship. I'm talking about the health of relationship. I'm sure you would agree that you can have a healthy relationship that is far from perfect, right? I'm not talking about a perfect relationship. I'm talking about healthy relationships. Would you agree that there are people who stay together for a very long time that have a very unhealthy relationship?
We can all think of 5 off the top of our heads.
Great. Okay. I can too. So my question is, when you're talking about things like gender roles, you outline only longevity. And I would challenge this by saying the issue is, have you heard of, for example, the gray revolution of divorce?
The gray revolution of divorce?
Yeah.
I've heard of divorce.
It's a really terrible name. It's a really terrible trend name. I'll grant you that.
Like I was about to say, they need to go back to their marketing guy. But like, no, explain it to me like I'm a small child or a golden retriever. It wasn't my brains that got me this far in life.
Sure. So it's basically a new kind of trend that marriage and family therapists have noted specifically, where the divorce rates are most high amongst couples who've been married for a really long time. So particularly like my parents' age, so going to be like the boomer era, are divorcing at actually some of the highest rates of any populace. So they have longevity of relationship. A lot of these relationships are 25 plus years. However, they're divorcing at a really high rate. And one of the major reasons cited is because they're desperately unhappy in the relationship.
NotSoErudite, people are saying your mic is a little bit low.
You'll have to bump me on your side. I am maxed out on my side.
I was about to say, she sounds all right to me. Well, you do touch on something very interesting. It's something everyone within the sound of my voice, especially the Zoomer generation, the Gen Z, anyone within the sound of my voice here, keep in mind who you have children with and who you decide to marry will be the most important financial decision you ever make in this life. Bill Gates made billions. His choice of spouse was still the most important financial decision he ever made in this life. So there are people who, yes, stay together because of finances for the kids and yada, yada, yada. I get that. But if you make a commitment to each other, and here's the thing, like, I don't know if you're religious or not so erudite, but when you make your vows to the Lord, it's not just about the two of you. It's also about your longevity and keeping your vows to the Almighty. Okay. Like, so there's a little bit more to it, especially when you're talking in the terms of like a Christian marriage.
Phil, do you think that people should stay together, couples, where they're not happy?
I think you need to juxtapose your personal happiness versus if you made a true and committed vow to the Lord.
Yeah, well,
there's plenty of like. Do you think the Amish like the fact that they don't have phones? No, but they made a vow to the Lord.
Hang on. One thing you need to look at though is that marriage is rocky. So you might have years where you're unhappy, and then have years where you're in bliss. It's not so cut and dry as to just say, oh, well, do you think that people should be unhappy in marriage? It's like, okay, people are going to be unhappy in all kinds of things for certain durations. People work jobs they might be unhappy in for certain durations, and then they move things around in their life and become happier. It's far more complex than just, we were just unhappy. We're just unhappy.
I have a question.
I'm going to try to be, I'll be a little bit more specific. What about a situation where your wife cheats on you? Should you stay together with her?
Well, in that case, she broke her vow to the Lord, and then.
So you would walk away in that situation?
Yeah, the answer is no. That's infidelity. Yeah. No, you're not going to stay with people who
are unfaithful to you.
Yeah, that's infidelity.
They're not going to be faithful to their vow to the Lord. Why should you stay faithful to a vow that they're not going to be faithful to?
What about if she's just super rude to you every single day? Like every single day, just a massive bitch.
Then you said I do and fucking grin and bear it.
Well,
you make your vows to the Lord.
No, I mean that's the wrong way to look at it.
Well, now what do you mean by rude? Like,
it's work. It's work. Okay, so first of all, under Alex's fictitious stereotype here, we're assuming that there's women who are just going to act like a bitch every single day of their life. I'm sure that there are some of those, right? I've probably met a few. Okay, but the thing is again, marriage is work. You have to at least give it, a certain sequential amount of time. But infidelity is not something that you need to stick around for. Of course not.
Yeah, I get all that. I'm just doing a thought experiment to see kind of what Phil's logic is when it comes to marriage. So that's why I asked that question. So you asked, what does it mean like her being rude to her? I'll try to paint you a picture. Let's say every single day you wake up and you're like, hi, honey. And she's like, ugh. She doesn't talk to you. And when she does talk to you, she treats you like a little kid. She's massively rude to you, but she doesn't cheat on you. She doesn't break any of her other vows. Would that be a situation where you think it would be okay to get a divorce?
Like
every single day for 5 years.
It's like, why did you marry this person? First of all, it sounds like you fell into Socrates' problem where his wife was apparently, by his own account, a real wrench, and just was always giving him shit and pouring water on him and just being an ass to him. Like he'd be philosophizing with his students. She'd pour a bucket of water right on his head as he's philosophizing with his students. He still stayed with her till hemlock did they part.
Has anything to do with a 25-year marriage, right? The idea of like, well, you should marry the right one. It falls apart when you have, you can't predict 25 years later what you and your partner are going to be like. For example,
really be
as somebody
careful about that choice.
Sure.
I'm more careful than we are now. People treat it like it's the third step of dating. Okay, like that's like unfortunately in today's world.
Like it's the third step of dating. In fact, most people are just choosing not to get married for a really long time. So that's
come to the Midwest.
Okay. What I'm actually talking about is like, I'm sure you're aware of 25, 30-year marriages that end up falling apart, not because they picked the wrong person, but because over 25 to 30 years, resentments build up. It's hard to communicate these things, and people fall so out of love that they forget the shadow of what their love even looked like. They can't even remember what it felt like to enjoy being in the space of other people.
That's a good line. I'm stealing that one.
You can. And the issue is that when we're talking about things like marriage, death to you part, like I'm all for that. I love the idea of basically being like, you should do everything in your utmost power to make your relationship work if you've made that commitment. I'm with you there, actually. The issue is we're not actually detailing like what you're talking about when you're talking about like just longevity. And my question about health is, how do we maintain, because a really common issue cited in these gray divorcees actually goes down to rigid gender roles, where a lot of the women, by the time they've been in the relationship for 65 plus years, they're sick and tired of them cooking and cleaning and working.
Yeah.
And their husband is still just sitting
Yeah.
around
Which sex is initiating these divorces in these marriages? Yeah. Mostly women, always mostly women. So when you say, you know that there's people who are super unhappy with each other over 20, it's not really true. What it is that there's a bunch of women who become dissatisfied with their men for various reasons. Not that the man, for the most part, is frothing at the mouth to get divorced. That's what's actually true. So don't say people, because it's not people. It's mostly women who become dissatisfied on their end, while men are still doing everything that they can do to keep their marriage together.
I wouldn't say that a man is doing everything that he's doing to keep the marriage intact. Like
then why aren't they initiating the divorces then?
Okay, but the same reason why men self-delete is because when you don't have an out to the problems in your life, what do? You want out. I mean, a divorce is almost equivalent to the fact that you can't do anything about it as a woman when you're submitting yourself to your man and he's just, oh, I'm providing, I'm doing my job as a man. But that's more than that in the relationship. You think you're just supposed to bring home like the bread? That's it?
Not
what
my
else are you supposed to be
point.
doing?
That's a total red herring. My point specifically is, why is it that it's the women who are initiating these divorces at such an extravagant rate, regardless of which sector you're looking at, which age demographic you're looking at? They're the ones who are falling out of love. They're the ones who seem to be having this issue. The issue does not seem to be coming from the man's side. So when NotSoErudite frames this as, what about when people are falling out of love and people are having all these issues? It's not really people having these issues.
It is people,
with each
because
other.
you
No,
can
it's
say
women having these issues.
No, you can say that a man neglects his woman in a relationship. So that's him falling out of love. That's him neglecting her. And that's the same way. Just because your love language and the way that you view love is different than a woman doesn't mean that we can measure the same metrics in a relationship as the same. It's not the
see.
same.
So men are just being dicks.
Did I say that? I think you're being extremely
I think you just did, because what you're doing is you're saying literally, look, that the man's being neglectful and this and that, and the woman has no choice. That's ridiculous. 1, 2, demonstrate it. Demonstrate it.
I'm saying two people don't know how to communicate in relationships. You're obviously talking above each other like we are right now. So that's a prime example of a relationship when two people don't want to understand each other. So what happens? You fall out of love.
It's a prime example when you're wrong.
For better or for worse.
Yeah, so you've already checked out of the relationship. So you're just figuring you're gonna go through the motions of life, be a man, and then what happens? She's still gonna cook, clean, raise your kids, raise your legacy.
Show any evidence for that. You're just making it up as you go.
This is the average relationship. What do you mean?
What do you mean? No, don't say, what do you mean this is the average nothing? Because it's not. You're lying. You're not even telling the truth.
Do you want statistics on like why women divorce, like the most common
not
reasons for
why
divorce?
women divorce. That's not what's important here. What's important here
it's
is whether or not men
if you want
are
the relationship,
whether
if you
or
want
not
the relationship to
let me
continue
finish,
and to
let me
thrive.
finish.
Okay.
The point is are men, like she claims, being these neglectful, horrible monsters, thus leaving women with no choice but to abandon the marriage? That's the claim I contest.
Okay, if we're going to talk about like why these relationships fall apart, will you not think it's important to see what the reasons are that women are citing for those divorces?
It's mostly due to dissatisfaction. Just
Okay,
general dissatisfaction, whatever the fuck that means.
Okay,
could mean anything, could mean nothing.
No, but we can like try, if you want, like right now, we could like try to see more specifics about that general dissatisfaction.
Then get into it. Let's get into it.
Okay, give me 1 second while I pull shit up.
While you pull that up, I just have a quick question for Phil, because I don't think I ever actually got an answer to my original question. So let's say you pick a girl who seems really great, right? She seems awesome. And then 5, 10 years later into the relationship, she starts being super rude to you every single day.
Who you decide to marry is your most important financial decision. It will either be the leader of your happiness and your inner peace, or it will lead to your personal financial ruin. Pick fucking well, folks. And so this idea that someone's just completely perfect presents no red flags that you didn't see along the way. I'm sorry. That's kind of the silly hypothetical.
I'm giving you a hypothetical. It's a very simple.
That's kind of what I'm being presented here. So I'm just, if you're bringing me silly hypothetical, I can fire silly hypothetical.
Just answer the question. I don't know why you're running away from this question.
You make your vows to the Lord and nobody's cheated on each other, nobody's abused each other.
You stay together. Like every single day, she's super rude to you. She has no respect for you. She doesn't.
Socrates is able to do it. Why can't you?
Because I don't want to be miserable. Okay, so you would just stay together with her forever?
Bruh.
When you make your vows, like I'm going to say, okay, Zoomers, Gen Zers, take your vows to the Lord a lot more seriously than the Millennials, the Gen Xers, and the Boomers did, okay?
That's pretty nuts to me, man.
So this is just like the worst fucking advice ever, because if that's the advice that you're giving, there's a whole bunch of Christian boomers that are divorcing after their kids have left.
Yeah.
Because they're incredibly
because of women.
No, because they're dissatisfied with the relationship.
Because the women are dissatisfied with the relationship.
Men have no role to play in women being dissatisfied in their relationship. We can
I think.
talk about, hold on.
I think that the standards of what each one expects is different. Don't ask me a question and then say, "Let me finish a thought." That makes no sense.
Well,
do you think is a question, so you know?
Go ahead and finish.
Yeah, she didn't finish her question. She was trying to elaborate on it completely. Like,
okay, hold on.
Might as well let her finish.
Just slide in and help her out a little more.
Tom, I think you should bump up Kyla's mic because there's a massive discrepancy.
Yeah, if you can.
If I do, it's going to change the settings on her side as well.
That's okay.
I would try. She's too quiet.
Okay,
all right, let's just all give her a moment.
Go ahead. Go ahead and ask your question. NotSoErudite, yes.
Fuck. Now we're so.
Can I finish? Oh shit, I'm finished.
No. So when we're talking about boomer relationships, right, and we're talking about why they're leaving, yes, it is the case that women are initiating the relationship more, ending the relationship more. The question
Well, how much
is,
more?
in boomer relationships specifically, I'm not actually sure. I'll have to get back to you because
But
younger
it's
relationships.
statistically far higher for the women than it is the
I'm
men.
probably willing to grant that. I don't actually know though. I'd probably have to check and see.
Okay.
But I'd be willing to grant that it's probably women. The question is, why are women dissatisfied? Because you and I both know that it takes two in a relationship. And so if women are increasingly dissatisfied in their relationships, it might suggest that the way that they were doing these love-based relationships, even historically, wasn't a super good model for longevity.
It might also suggest something different. It might also suggest that there's a problem going on with women in the way that they're socialized in society, in the way that they regard men, which has not ever been a traditional problem that any society has ever had that can be pointed to by anybody. Nobody's ever seen this before, where women can just say, well, I'm just dissatisfied with the relationship. Goodbye. That hasn't happened. The socialization could also be an indication of the issue, not just some behavioral analysis between the dynamic between men and women. It could be a societal implication. Some media, everything else could have a part of that.
Sure. So it could be women's entitlement. It could be that women are not taking their partners for granted. It could also probably be that men are maybe not fulfilling the roles. They're maybe not actually meeting women's needs where they're wanting them to be met anymore. And there's also societal pressures as well that are causing destruction.
That would be, don't you think, though, Kyla, that it's difficult to believe that the rates are so skewed and that men are just not fulfilling the needs of the women? Doesn't that sound even off to you? Doesn't that seem odd? The rates are sloped so badly that you either have to assume that men are doing something wrong or there's something else going on. So if we're talking about that something else, which you're trying to allude to, when you say, yeah, okay, I just said, like, you're trying to allude to the something else, but you're not really talking about the societal implication, which seems like it's more likely that there's social pushings in media that cause this women's liberation bullshit in their minds, rather than having a realistic outlook. There's also huge amounts of these women who leave who have huge regret, way more regret than is advertised. That's a part that's not advertised in these divorces. So
do you have stats on that? I'd like to hear that.
Yeah, I would need to confirm that. I believe that some are going to be dissatisfied because of like major life changes, but I don't know if like over 10 years that divorced women are distinctly much more dissatisfied and have high levels of regret. I would need to see.
Well, I don't know if boomer women have 10 years to be dissatisfied, right?
Boomer women are like 50 to 60. Of course they have 10 years to be dissatisfied.
Well, I don't think that there's a whole lot of women getting remarried at 60 and 70, not so erudite. To be perfectly honest with you, I don't think there are.
Yeah, but
I think it's a very limited. I think it's a very limited pool.
Do you think that you only need to be married to find life satisfaction?
Did I say that? Why are you straw manning me?
I'm not straw manning you. I'm taking the implications of your words. You just finished saying that these old married women aren't getting remarried when talking about specifically life satisfaction. I asked you for stats on life satisfaction.
I didn't say life satisfaction. I was talking about their regret from the divorce. That's different than life satisfaction. Talking about dissatisfaction. You're just making shit up again. Like, what are you talking about?
I'm connecting your own thought to itself. You just said.
Then what's my thought? What did I actually say?
You were implying that there's a connection between marriage and satisfaction.
Their dissatisfaction from the marriage, from being divorced, not their overall general dissatisfaction of life. It's a whole different argument.
Yeah, so I was asking you, over 10 years of longevity, do we have evidence that divorced women are distinctly unhappy, old divorced women? And you said, I'm sure that's true. They're definitely not getting remarried. And I said,
well, you do. You have tons of it.
Let me finish so we can just get all this.
Stop asking me questions then.
I'm literally not. I'm re-outlining your fucking arguments. You said...
You're not re-outlining my fucking arguments. What you're doing is you straw man, then ask me a question, I respond, you say I'm cutting you off. It's ridiculous.
Yes, you're the victim, the perpetual cardboard. Keep going, Andrew. Okay, what you were saying is that there is 10 years. Do they even get to live 10 years? Was part of in there, and I said, of course they do, because they're just fucking 60. They probably have 10 years to live. And you said, well, they're probably not very happy. I doubt they're getting married again. And I said, why are you assuming that they're going to be remarried in order to be happy? Do you not think that they can find happiness and fulfillment outside of a marriage?
Didn't say that they couldn't.
Then why did you imply it?
I didn't imply it. I implied that they have regrets from being divorced for the third time. I literally said this 3 times. You can literally go on YouTube right this second and see tons of old bags crying about how disappointed they are that they left their man.
Yeah,
And you know that's true, NotSoErudite. You've covered some of them.
You'd have to show basically like some sort of like statistical analysis rather than just saying like, oh, you can look at YouTube videos.
Well, I didn't bring
can
my
look at YouTube
statistical analysis for how many boomer women have regret from being divorced.
No, you would, because there is a chance that like women who are divorced are happier because they no longer have to live with that dissatisfaction in their marriage, right? I can't just say like, oh, just look at, and also I can't say this in return either. I can't be just like, go to YouTube and look at women who are happy. Like that's not an answer to fucking anything. That's basically like, look at what the algorithm fed me.
First
it
of
said
all,
this, so I'm gonna believe the algorithm.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, please.
So do you want me to pull up statistics on the dissatisfaction rate of divorcees?
Yeah, there's like a study that shows that
Absolutely.
40 to 50% of divorcees have regret after and even admit to still loving their exes.
Send it. Do it.
You haven't provided any evidence for anything except your mouth.
I'm not even making. I haven't even made a claim.
You haven't made any. You haven't given an account for anything. Neither has Kyla. Kyla hasn't shown any evidence for anything.
What evidence would you like?
What are you talking about?
I actually found statistics.
Would you like, Andrew? Hold on. Andrew, what evidence would you like?
Well, if we're going to go through this, then let's go through what the dissatisfaction rate is post divorce, because I have a feeling it's going to be problematic.
And I said, I'm dubious. If you can prove it, that's fine. I'm just dubious of your claim. So what evidence?
Okay, hang on. Gray divorce is on the rise, and some experts are scratching their heads. Even more confusing is the fact that many more women than men are seeking gray divorce. Some estimates show as many as 2/3 of all gray divorces are initiated by women. So we can establish that first claim is correct, right?
Yeah, we all agree on that. Yeah.
Right. So hang on, I'm going to pull this up. I've got it right here, and we can look at the dissatisfaction rates. But you got to give me a second to look it up. You literally don't have to dead air.
Let me just, it's related. I'm going to read a quick statistic about something Andrew said earlier, because it was interesting. I'll look it up. So the share of for people 45 to 54, they getting remarried a little bit less than they used to, but it went from 69% to 63%. So still 63% of people over 45 are getting remarried. So it's more than half.
Oh.
Now, I remember it was a Mike Birbiglia joke, but the statistics were correct that on first marriage, the divorce statistics are now 55%. The second marriage, they get married a second time, the divorce statistics are 63%. And the third marriage is now at 70-some-odd% likelihood of getting divorced. That's the learning curve, folks. Oh, Jesus. But yeah, even Einstein got divorced. So not even
that makes sense. The point I'm making is that most older people do wind up getting remarried.
So here's a question. We want to blame women for all these divorces. Do you guys agree, though, that there might be a crisis of masculinity in our world? Andrew and Phil? And
we don't.
Whoa. I've never blamed women. I'm going to say, like, it takes two to tango in every... Well, no, it takes two to tango, which means nobody in the relationship is fucking blameless when it fucking falls apart. Why are we trying to absolve one and not everybody's?
I don't care about you. I'll just ask it. I don't care about you.
Well, no, you asked me specifically, and now you're like, well, you gave an answer that I don't like. It doesn't help me. So now you don't care.
I assumed you're part of the group. It turns out that you don't have that position, so I don't want to talk to you because you don't have that position. That's fine. I'm just going to ask Andrew then, since he has a position that is mostly on women, and I think SpeakeaZy does as well, but I could be wrong.
I thought he was just
so the question is,
think there's a crisis of masculinity? Yeah.
That's leading to the divorce rate. I think that there's a crisis of masculinity, but I think that its tie into divorces is more limited as a factor. So I think that it exists, of course, but I'm not sure how much it ties in to the divorce rate. The reports even on this gray marriage are that these women are just literally getting divorced due to growing apart dissatisfaction reasons, very generic reasons, not saying it's because her husband wasn't masculine enough. That's not what's being reported. In any of the marriage stats that I've seen, in fact, I haven't seen he wasn't masculine enough as being the report. So
to be fair, I don't think that's an option.
Sure. Yeah. I also doubt that people are going to put their finger on that. Like, I don't think when a woman divorces her husband, she's like, oh, man, he just wasn't a man enough. She's probably just going to be like, I fell out of love. I didn't like him anymore. And so I think
Carissa Avalone would say that.
I'm not interested in that. Why do you think women are so dissatisfied in their relationship?
I think that there's I think that there's societal pressures and media and everything else that that pushes towards this idea of feminism and men and women being interchangeable widgets, and giving women a false promise that if they were just on their own doing their own thing and this kind of thing, that they would feel liberated and they wouldn't have the oppression of the patriarchy and all this other bullshit. I think that that's far more likely.
Okay, well,
I think there could be both, though. I do agree that that's part of it for sure, but I agree that probably a lot of dudes that are losing masculinity is why women are leaving them as well. Like I think this could both be reasons.
Yeah, I mean, but NotSoErudite and I aren't even disagreeing that that could be a factor. We're just kind of arguing how much of a factor it might be compared to kind of the mass media
zeitgeist, you got a lot of background
right?
noise, please.
I'd say she's in a fish market or something.
Yeah. Well, with that gray divorce you were talking about, that was from the 1990 to the 2010, right? That's the one you're talking about, Erudite?
Yeah, that's one of the big studies.
So it's like it's kind of on the rise with like MSN and internet shit, giving women a little bit like more options as well. So I think that's kind of plays into it too.
Yeah, it's a media zeitgeist. I don't think that it's a crisis of masculinity, though I will say that there is becoming a crisis of masculinity in the West as we're debating things as stupid as what about gender roles inside of the household? I mean, none of the gals on this panel can even argue the fact that basically all of the linemen and construction workers and foresters and everything else of the world are men. And it's not because women are held back from doing those jobs. It's just they have no interest in doing those jobs. They're not ever going to have interest in doing those jobs. It's not their wheelhouse.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think most heterosexual relationships will fall into a somewhat normative gender role, and I think that's totally fine. The issue is we're talking about how women are dissatisfied, and I think you agreed with me that there's a crisis of masculinity. And
no, I didn't agree with that. With that being the direct correlation with the divorce rates.
Sure, that's fine, but you agreed with me that there's a crisis of masculinity in our society.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, there's
Would you
no doubt
also
about
agree,
that.
for example, that women are catching up financially and they're actually outpacing men educationally as well?
Yeah, but that only tells half the story. So while it's true,
I'm not painting a story yet.
Yeah, so that only tells half the tale. So while that's true, yeah, but I don't think that that's the kind of masculinity that we're having a significant issue with.
You don't think that women want to be able to somewhat like look up to or at least have an equal partner with a male who's both financial and educational?
No, I think that that's a materialist, secularist way of looking at it. I think that the crisis of masculinity has to do with virtue, and that society is becoming less virtuous. It's following less and less in the way of Christian virtues. I don't think that that's arguable. And so promiscuity and all these other contributing factors skyrocket. And I think that that has to do a lot with the dissatisfaction of both the male incels, which are out there, and the women who are in these constant flux of divorce rates.
You know, all that just makes me so sad. Like, it just makes me so sad. Like it's just such a dreadful way of looking at marriage. It's like, I have no experience, right? But just seeing that, it just like gives me an existential crisis. Like, oh, one day we'll fall out of love. That shit's depressing, man. Like that's fucking depressing.
I mean, one day we're all gonna die.
Choose properly.
Yeah, I mean, I know we're all gonna die, but just to think that marriage just fizzles out like that, and you have to resort to other shit.
I literally don't care about your woman prattle feelings. We were having a great discussion. Can we get back to that?
I actually have a question for Andrew. I have a quick question for Andrew.
Dreadful, dude. Like, it's giving me a crisis.
Makes me so sad. I'm gonna cry. I don't care. Let's get back to the argument.
I have a quick question for Andrew. Do you share the same belief as Phil? Let's say your wife does a complete 180. Instead of baking you those delicious cookies, she becomes super bitchy towards you all the time. And you try to wait it out, give it a year, give it two. 5 years later, she's not getting better. She's not changing, and she's not taking accountability. And every single day, she's literally ultra rude to you. It seems like she has no respect for you, but she doesn't cheat on you. Whether at that point you think it would be a good idea to walk away, or would you still stay together with her?
So I don't think that these two things follow that well. I think if a woman is so dissatisfied and so horrific to you, the chances are she's going to be the one who initiates leaving anyway. That seems to be what the stats show. But to answer your point directly, I would try to work on the marriage as much as I possibly could. I've had rocky times in my marriage, just like many people have. A couple of bad years due to finances and everything else. Yes, of course, I would try my hardest to work those issues out. But if it came to a point, let's say, to like grant the ultimate to you, just like 15 years of just incessantly being a bitch every single day, 7 days a week, there is a point in which I think a partner can abandon the marriage while still being in the marriage. And then it fits within the confines of religiously maybe petitioning for a divorce at that point. I think that that's reasonable if that's the case and that's what's going on, because you can't abandon your marriage even while you're still married.
Okay, so you have a different position than Phil on
That's
that.
what I was saying.
Okay, I feel like maybe I'll be willing to, I would grant you that material secularism is on the rise. And we've also established that masculinity is falling. And it sounds like a really good formula for women specifically to be dissatisfied. If they're materially outperforming their men, or at least now materially on par, or educationally outperforming their men, and masculinity is falling, so we might not be occupying as many like roles that like make her feel protected or make her feel like safe or make her feel like basically more or less he embodies something masculine. Because I think most heterosexual women want their guy to be more masculine than feminine. I think most of us would probably agree with that, right? So if he's failing in those regards and materially she's fully caught up, there isn't really much that he's offering here. And I'm not blaming and saying men are all shitbags, right? That's a way too unsophisticated analysis. But when I look at women being dissatisfied in relationships, I believe them, right? And I don't want to look at this as like being like, man, bad. That's clearly not my position. But I believe women when they're saying that they're dissatisfied. And I think there are a number of reasons contributing to this. And masculinity and like the crisis of masculinity and the intergenerational trauma of masculinity absolutely is contributing to this. It's
See,
not
I
substantive
so
women.
so I would
Real
actually
quick,
flip
we got
that.
2 more minutes left on this subject.
Yeah, I'd flip
so
that on
go
its.
ahead.
I'd actually flip that on its head and say the reverse. I would say that the materialism portion of that is the least in the regards to why these women are dissatisfied. I think instead, if the men weren't so benevolent, if they weren't so decent, and they weren't going out of their way to treat and simp for their wives and women, and instead were the bad boy down the street and were total shitbags and assholes to them, that the women would be far less likely to leave them. Which is why you see so many trends of women who have tons and tons of resources who seem to have these complete shitbags for husbands or boyfriends because they just don't care about them, disconnected. There's something else going on within the virtue system, and women tend to follow trends when it comes to society. Men are the trend buckers. And so if you're kind of looking at, is it virtuous for women to be skanks? In today's society, the answer is kind of yeah. I mean, media reinforces it at every turn. Is it virtuous for men, on the other hand, to be resistant to that? Well, society doesn't really reinforce that very often. So I think that it's a virtue crisis. It's a crisis of the soul far more than it is a crisis of materialism.
Okay, so you don't think that it's a crisis of materialism at all now?
Okay,
Just 'cause
so
I just wanna
early,
make sure I'm understanding.
I just want to make sure that you understand that earlier I said you're looking at this only through a secularist, materialist worldview, and you're only showing one side of the coin. Those were my exact words.
Okay. So let's maybe go into education, for example. Would you say, so women are probably outperforming men educationally. I think everyone can probably agree to that, right?
Yeah, because the
Last time I
system
looked it up.
the system is set up specifically for women's behavior and not for men's behavior.
Sure.
So that's why.
Sure, yeah. Women are flourishing more in educational settings. So why do poor educated people get divorced more often than educated people? For example, I don't think the bad boy down the street is exactly a good representative of a college-educated dude, even though college-educated men and college-educated women tend to have longer-lasting
Wait,
relationships.
college-educated women initiate divorce more than non-college-educated women do.
No,
what are
they
you
don't.
talking about? Yes,
No,
they
no,
do.
No,
Yes, they do. It scales up, in fact.
No.
No,
Okay,
it does not.
we're gonna go
Yes,
ahead and
it
go to
does
closing
too.
statements
No, it does
from
not.
here. You guys can give your last arguments on that. We're gonna go
Yes,
the
per
opposite
capita,
direction.
not so erudite. That's true. I'll pull up the statistic. It
Do
is
it.
true.
We're
Do
gonna-
it. Pull it up.
We're gonna go the opposite
literally,
direction
I'm
this
getting
time.
it pulled up right this second.
Nev, if you want to give your closing statement first.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Like, I have no say in this, but I just wish that, like, you know, it's just a dreadful situation. It's a dreadful situation to be in overall. Like, when shit starts to fizzle, like, what can you do, you know? But I think people are really quick to give up so easily. I think that has to do a lot with divorce. Like, they're willing to, like, just compromise everything because they just can't put the effort in, you know?
True. All right, thank you, Nev.
By the way, I just looked it up. The chance of marriage ending in
Hold up,
divorce.
hold up. We're going through closing statements right now. You can give the stats through closing statements. Angela, go ahead.
Closing statement. I just want to say, if men didn't have any assets to lose, I'm pretty sure the percentage of men initiating divorces would be pretty equal to women initiating divorces, but that's pretty much all I have to say.
All right, Alex, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to quickly quote the statistic because you guys were talking about it. The chance of marriage ending divorce was lower for people with more education. So it
But
seems
that wasn't the argument. When accounting
Hold on.
for
You
when
didn't
accounting
respond
when
during-
That is
accounting
literally
no
what you
it
said.
wasn't my
You're
count
weaseling.
no
You're weaseling.
when
If you
accounting
guys
for
wanna extend
just
this one, we
college
can.
when
Go
accounting
ahead.
for just college
Go ahead.
educated women, the figure jumps up to 90% for initiations of divorce, which was my exact point.
But they get divorced less often. And the
Yeah, there's less-
actual point that you were making was that women, even if they're
But what I
educated,
said was the
the
initiator.
material secularist women
Yeah.
are leaving their good, nice little husbands for the bad boy down the street. And I'm telling you, that's not fucking true because educated couples just last together longer overall. You have no evidence that these college educated
I just gave you
women are-
evidence.
No,
90%,
that's
90%
The evidence that you gave is that you
initiation.
don't understand how statistics work. That's the evidence that you gave right
What,
now.
oh, I don't you understand
No.
how statistics work, huh?
No, you literally just like proved that. You're saying
You
like,
literally aren't even saying anything. So anyway, back
I'll
to
say
what I
something
was
in a
saying.
second.
90%. It jumps up from 70 to 90 for college educated women for the initiation of
saying
divorce.
that
Now it
women
might be
in general
true.
overall
It might be
who are
true that educated
divorce less
couples
as a whole.
it might be true that educated couples stay together longer, but the initiation of the divorce still skyrockets from the woman's side. There's no way around that.
No, it's quite literally the opposite. The more well
I
educated you are,
just
the
I
less
just
likely.
stated the stats. It just put
Nobody
them
is
down.
arguing that women are initiating divorces more. Nobody's argued that. What I'm outlining to you is this idea that women are leaving their nice husbands for the bad boy down the street doesn't even make sense because when both couples are educated,
Not what I
the
said either.
relationship lasts
They don't
longer.
recall
That
ever
is
saying
what
that.
you said.
No, it's not what I said. I said I
Yes,
think
it is.
that if you're looking at the virtue of society, you're looking at virtues. I would probably flip your model upside down and say women would be happier with the bad boy down the street. That's completely different than the claim that you're making.
They're literally not happier because they're lasting longer in relationships with educated men, you dumb fuck. That's the point that I'm making.
You
Because
triggered not so erudite. Did you
That's
do the
fine.
destiny head thing? Do the destiny head thing more.
Sure, I can. I would
Yeah,
love
do
to.
that. Do
Straight
that.
intro.
I can't believe it.
Six
My
guns,
mind is
bro.
blown.
Yeah, and when you're out of state.
God,
you
Alex,
go
this has
to
been a
make
hell of a
fun
closing statement, man.
I know. It didn't even involve me. I'm happy to pass my closing statement. I think I've made my points throughout.
Okay, yeah, Andrew, if you want to finish your start your closing statement now.
It was a good one, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't even think we talked about gender roles very much, to be honest with you. It just kind of got sidetracked into marriage. But obviously, you can tell by the trends that women do initiate most divorces. Kind of the argument back and forth is between the secularist and materialist worldview versus a virtue-based worldview. I'm not saying that materialism has nothing to do with divorce. Never made that claim once, no matter how much people try to straw man me. Instead, I'm saying that I think that the indication shows that there's some type of issue going on inside of people's brains when it comes to how they perceive virtue. It's virtuous for women to be promiscuous skanks, and it's virtuous for men to have sex with lots of women. It's a bizarre phenomenon, and I think that that is probably the bigger indicator for why you have these issues in society.
Okay, not so erudite.
Okay. Yes, women are initiating divorce more because women are very dissatisfied in their relationships. And this isn't because men are big loser fucks who nobody should care about. It's because men need help. It's because society has absolutely redrafted new social scripts for women to occupy within, and women are just rocking it. They're doing well. And the issue is society has not made those same spaces and same allowances for men. And so men are struggling. There aren't good examples of what masculinity looks like. There aren't good examples of how to engage yourself within a relationship in 2023 with a woman who is just as educated and financially capable as you. Women are dissatisfied, but that isn't because men suck or women are evil. It's because men are absolutely being left behind by the way that we're socializing people. And there might be some criticisms about like women's expectations in relationships not being updated as well to map onto like, again, a more egalitarian relationship.
Awesome. Thank you. Pixie.
Okay, so basically earlier we were talking about like relationship dissatisfaction, and I wanted to kind of dive deeper to that. It kind of sucks that we don't have enough time to do that. At least from what I see, obviously that's a very vague term. You're right. So when we try to narrow it down more, it seems like one of like the biggest reasons, if not the biggest reason, is lack of commitment. And even then, that's vague. But the question is like, why do partners feel like the other one is not committing? What actions are people doing to make themselves like feel like, okay, there's a rift in this relationship where obviously like I don't feel like you're committed to me, you don't feel like you're committed to me, I don't feel committed to you. What's happening here? And I think if we try to like go into that, we see that it's like not just this shallow thing of like, oh, I just want more bad boys. It's more like, okay, like I don't feel like I'm being taken care of. I don't feel like, which, aligns with the traditional gender roles of, hey, women want to feel taken care of. Okay, what does that mean in this modern society? Okay, maybe that means doing a little bit of the chores more often instead of feeling like, oh, I'm the one doing all the household labor. Maybe it means like, okay, like let's like introduce like romance back into the relationship, going on dates, showing, appreciation for your partner. So I feel like this is a lot more complicated than just like women want bad boys.
All right, SpeakeaZy.
All right, yeah, I feel like we didn't get to really talk about too much about the gender roles either. But going off what they were talking about here, I think Erudite has a point here with masculinity being a problem and that being a contribution to the divorces. But I think femininity is a problem too, and feminism has fucked that all up too, in my opinion. And I think the whole point is that we don't teach the genders what the opposites are attracted to. We're just teaching them to be the same type of person, and this just doesn't work. Doesn't help society at all.
All right, and then Phil.
Thank you, Tom. At the beginning of this panel, I said that the basic gender roles in any relationship are quite simple. A man is to provide and a woman is to nurture, and nobody gave even the slightest pushback on that. So I guess I'll just chalk one up for your King of Extreme. But in reality, the only thing I'd like to say is anyone within the sound of my voice, we have seen what this kind of world gives us in outcomes, and take your vows to the Lord a lot more seriously than the generations before you. It will be the most important financial decision you ever make, whether you make $1 or $1 billion. Who you choose to have children with, who you decide to marry, will be far more important financially. It was to Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, and a couple of other billionaires. So yeah, keep that in mind, folks. And Tom, thanks for having me on, and let's roll right on, sir.
Awesome. All right. So nobody's used their shootout so far. Everybody still got theirs. We're going on to the second topic. So the question is, are men unfairly discriminated against in the court systems? And what should we do about it? So we got kind of two questions in one here. And this time we will start with the bottom row. So Pxie, if you want to go first. Sorry to interrupt your drink.
It's okay. So are men unfairly, the whole question is, are men unfairly treated in the court system? And
yeah.
Okay. And basically, yeah, there are certain ways that men are absolutely unfairly in the court system. At least to my understanding or my remembering, it seems that if like a man and woman commit the same crime, a man is much more likely to get a harsher sentence, right? I don't think that's like fair. I don't think that's okay. I think when it comes to like, let's say, divorce or taking care of the child, it seems like the number one custody is given to the primary caregiver, which makes sense. But I do think there's an argument to be said here that like men are discouraged from seeing themselves in that role and maybe like trying to pursue custody through that. So I think that's also another way that maybe not it's directly the justice system, but it's a way that we socialize men to work within this justice system that can negatively affect them. So I do think that men are unfairly discriminated in the court system for sure.
Awesome. NotSoErudite.
Yeah, so I would say there is some biases. So one thing, I've been looking at the data a lot on this to figure it out, because the broad statement is, yes, men are unfairly discriminated against, but it's actually more complicated than that. In general, the person who files for divorce is always biased toward in the court case. And basically after, once the first person initiates, the second person is always playing catch up. And so the biggest thing is actually who files first. But as we already said, it's mostly women that are filing first. So there's this already major slant. So there needs to be some sort of policy. I think the best policy to actually correct is to have a system that doesn't bias first initiator. I think there's a really bad idea. And the first initiator gets a bunch of biases in that they get to frame narratives. They often get to make a bunch of claims about ownership that now has to be disputed and stuff like that. And so probably first initiator bias is one of the best things that we can do to actually like see the scales balancing a little bit more evenly in divorce courts. When it comes to custody, I think that we've got, custody, I would basically say probably what more or less Pxie has said, and I'll probably agree with most of the panel that there's this absolute bias towards women with custody. And I'll end there for a minute.
All right, Big Papa Fascist. Or Andrew, sorry.
Yeah, it's not really disputable. There's not just a bias in the criminal justice system where women get less harsh punishments than men do for literally the same crime across the board. And this is also not just a phenomenon isolated to the United States. This is almost a global phenomenon. Everywhere I looked, this was the case, which shows, again, the benevolent nature, by the way, of men and the way that we perceive women. But also, just in divorce alone, of course, it's skewed in favor of women. So, I mean, yeah, the entire criminal justice system is skewed against men and towards women for sure. If you're going to, I think it's more complex, and you can't just break the dynamic down as simplistically as that. But if you're going to just kind of summarize it, yeah, there's definitely bias.
All right, Alex.
Yeah, I don't know if any of us are going to actually have a disagreement on this topic. Yes, men are discriminated against when it comes to divorce court. The solution would be to give joint custody unless one of the parents is unqualified to take care of the kids, or some kind of drug problem or some kind of violence problem. But aside from that, to give joint custody.
All right, Angela.
Yeah, I agree with Alex. I don't know if we're all going to disagree with anything, but I do agree broadly that there is a bias against men when it comes to the injustice in the court system, but also the lack of evidence we have to prove. I think as men, there are certain things, and it goes back to gender roles, and the things that you may lack and may not know when it comes to the court system. So again, once a woman initiates a lot of these divorces, you're kind of playing catch up the entire time. So yeah.
I just want to be clear. I didn't say. It seems like everybody's entire answer is about divorce court. I was not specifically asking about divorce court. I was asking about like criminal court and all of those other things as well. But
which is what I brought up. I brought up
Andrew
criminal.
actually.
Yeah.
Okay, Phil K.O.E.
Oh,
sorry. Wait, I'm sorry. I skipped
say,
Nev. My apologies. Nev, go ahead.
Nev on the bus.
I'm just gonna, I'm just gonna say, yeah, in regards to divorce court, yeah, some kids end up with absolutely pieces of shit mothers because of the bias towards men. Like, for example, the Gabriel Fernandez case, he ended up getting killed by his mother and her step.
I'm on Twitch, please don't say that. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, and it ended up going really poorly because of a bias towards the father. So, like, situations like that usually happen because of that sort of.
Awesome. Thank you, Nev.
In general, like, when it comes to crime, like, okay, yeah. Okay, I'm done.
Okay. Phil, go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, it's something Andrew touched on. Not only, like, we all kind of recognize divorce court. We all can just kind of see that. There's not really dispute there that, like, if you're a man walking into a divorce court, oh, woe is you. But in the criminal justice, like, this is a joke that I've actually heard state troopers years ago say. There literally is something they call it the pussy pass. If okay, two criminals both have a tiny little bit of drugs. The dude's probably getting his cuffs slapped on him and taken downtown. Girl, he might kick the drugs into the ditch and say, you get on out of here. Don't let me see you around here again. I've actually heard state troopers say that at poker games before. And so it's the literal term they call it is pussy pass. And so, like, I know. You never thought such curses would come from my lips, but yes. But no, it's literally there is a double standard, and you can actually look at the statistics as to incarceration here and the same crimes and how different people go through the court system. So yes, there is something to that. I don't know how you go about changing it unless you just go about retraining every judge in all American Sundry. I don't really know how you would go about that. So with that, I yield.
All right, and then SpeakeaZy.
For the divorce courts and custody, I actually agree with what Alex was saying there. I think instantly it should be a joint custody automatically, and if unless one parent obviously is unfit. And then, like, for criminal court, like, it's hard to say what you like. It's obvious that men face more time for the same crimes. Like, just recently there was like some 30-year-old woman that got pregnant by a 14-year-old, and she didn't go to jail. Nothing happened. She just gets to live her life and make this kid have a kid from 14 years old. So yeah, there's definitely a standard there, a double standard there. I think the only way to fix it is just enforce the law harder on women.
Awesome. All right. Yeah, we can do probably a little bit shorter on this one since we went over on the last one. And then you guys can go ahead, whoever wants to open up.
I can actually put this topic to rest because I just looked it up. Women are sent to jail 42% less than men, and they receive 25% shorter sentences.
Yeah, well, nobody's disputing that. It's the causation that I think we would dispute. So, again, I would kind of indicate and point back to virtues. And when we're talking about virtuous society, it's become kind of a standard that women aren't held responsible for their actions. They're kind of infantilized, and we treat them like they're infants who have no agency, and that's the incorrect way to go about doing things. So I think it's a virtue issue again. All of these things always seem to indicate or go back to societal engineering against virtue. So, for instance, if a man molests a 13-year-old girl, society views it as being heinous in comparison to when a 13-year-old boy is molested by the same aged female. Why is that? Well, it's power dynamics or some bullshit the left makes up, but it's not true. It's because of an elimination of virtue. We should be applying a virtuous standard to women as well, and we just don't. We just don't do it because men have lost their own virtuous standards.
I think it's interesting the way that you phrase this is like this has been something that's been lost, because it seems like, at least to my understanding, these biases in the court system have existed since like basically the court system itself, right? So oftentimes when you look at like these like hearings, or when you look at why did these women get sentenced less than men, like even from, let's go 1900s or even before that, the reasons are always like, well, that pretty lady or that little old lady, she can't really hurt anybody or she's not that much of a threat. And I think this is just this idea of like prevalent. And
no, that's an oversimplification. So
well, no, I think
when you're
women
still looking at
can I finish? I'm almost done. I think looking like throughout, our history and society, we have always seen women as like less threatening than men.
They are less threatening than men.
Well,
that's why we look at it that way.
What do you think the court system is for?
In the United States, the court system is supposed to be about having blind justice, and it's supposed to be about justice. That's what it's supposed to be.
It's supposed to be about justice, right?
Yeah.
So if you commit a bad action, right, and you are, hurting society, you should be held to that standard of like, okay, like, no, we have to bring you to justice.
No, it doesn't have to be a bad action necessarily for a court to interject for justice.
Okay, like an illegal, whatever, an illegal action, do you not think that like
doesn't even have to be an illegal action, but go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Because I guess the point that I'm trying to convey here is that I do think if you commit this like bad or illegal action, right, one that our society deems like unfit and unokay, then yes, you are a threat to society just as much as a man is, right? So you should be punished just as well. So when you're saying like, oh, women are less threatening than men, I don't necessarily agree with you, because I think
there's nothing to dispute. There's nothing to dispute.
Okay, because earlier you were just like women are less threatening than men, and I'm just like, okay, well that's part of the problem. That's why people are
You're not listening. You're not listening.
Okay.
So it is true that the reason that men overrepresent almost all violent crime in almost all sectors and always will is because we're literally engineered to be predators. We're engineered to be predatory. That's what we're biologically engineered to do. So, of course, the crime rates for men are going to be sky high in comparison to women. But what's happened is that, no, it has not been a historic standard that if women are found guilty of crimes, they were given a lesser punishment. We burned witches at the stake, right? We literally burned them at the stake. They weren't given a lesser punishment. When it came to infidelity, we executed them. They weren't given a lesser punishment. So this is not a historical apt thing that you're talking about. Even inside of justice systems, which are somewhat modern, which were modern European justice systems from the 1600s, we were still burning witches. So no, women were held to a higher standard when we were virtuous.
Argument. Do you actually think that? Yes, it is. Yeah. Continue to form.
I can't.
To be fair, you're being kind of dismissive without addressing it, though.
Sure, I will address it as well. So, do you actually think that in the 1800s that they regarded, for example, like a woman assaulting another person and mugging them? Do you think that they treated that equal to a man, or do you think that they were probably likely to dismiss her as like a silly little woman?
I think that it wasn't something that was encountered often. So I can understand why the penalty differential would be there versus crimes that were encountered often by women, where the penalty differential was not set higher for men than women. They were burned at the stake, for instance.
Yes,
like
women were seen to
infidelity.
be witches more often than men were, but you're just talking about a gender-specific type of crime that they were
Right.
punished for.
Which,
You're
so
not
are
at all
you. So are
establishing-
you. Mugging
No,
is
I'm
a
not.
gender-specific type of crime.
I just asked you that gender.
Isn't that a gender-specific type of crime, mugging? Yes or no?
No, men do it more often. That's
Then
not
it's
the
a
same thing as what we're talking
gender-specific
about.
type of crime.
No. Because
Okay,
in the
but
case of-
witch burning is a gender-specific type of crime, even though men who are witches
Yes,
also
because
got
they were
burned.
literally
Even
witches.
though men who are witches got burned, huh?
Yes, because
This
they
is
weren't
big
literally
brain
witches.
erudite
Can you
here.
let her
Hold on.
finish?
This is so fucking obvious because in the cases of witches, we all know now that literally nothing was happening. It was just mass paranoia that often resulted in women being killed. Whereas in the cases of mugging, the crimes were actually
First of
happening,
all, that's
and yes,
historically illiterate.
men
You don't
do
know what
more
you're talking
crime.
about.
Do you
It
believe in
had-
witchcraft, Andrew?
most of the time, the reason that people were burned as being witches is because midwives assisted in abortions. They assisted in abortions. That was what they were mostly being burned for. Now, there was some instances where there was mass hysteria when it came to certain trials and things like this. But if you had read my wife's book, Occult Feminism, you would actually know this because she goes over it in great detail.
Historical book, top on the Amazon.
Witch
list.
talk.
It references actual historical books from documented scholars, but that's fine because it was written by her. It must be invalid, even though she references their work.
Tom, I
Genius
think we
erudite.
found your Halloween pen.
No one is saying that.
I just don't care about your wife's book as evidence for whether or not this is true.
I didn't offer her book as evidence. I offered the stuff in her book which references historic facts as evidence.
I can't.
I have a
I
question.
feel like that's just like 2 steps away from just being able to shill your wife's book. Well done, sir. Well done.
I agree. By the way, I'm very
I have
proud of
a
that.
question.
But now back to this, I do have to ask, how could you say that it's gender specific for witch burning when men were burned as witches, but it's not gender specific when it came to mugging? You're literally talking about just which gender does it more. How could that not be the case?
But didn't you bring up the example
No,
as
no,
it
I
being-
want her to answer my question.
Oh,
How can
okay.
that not be the case? How can that
Alright.
not be the case?
All right, buddy.
Of women, there wasn't a crime occurring. There was an assumption of crime against a specific individual, and it seems like society constantly wanted to pin that on women. In the case of mugging, mugging is a real crime that actually occurs. And so I'm trying to ask in the 1800s.
They're both real crimes. Witchcraft would be a real crime even if you don't think that it was real. It was still a real crime. What the hell are you talking about?
So do you believe witchcraft is a thing that can actually happen? Do you think
It doesn't matter. It was treated as a crime, whether they're actually doing something magical or not.
not
irrelevant.
Regardless, like in a sense, a crime was committed against these women that were burned at the stake
No,
as well.
everyone
So
is
still,
doing
that is a gender-specific crime, even by that standard.
What we're talking about is historically, was it the case that women were treated equal in the eyes of the law and viewed as just as likely to be perpetrators as men, and therefore treated equally under the law?
For the crimes that they were usually committing, yes.
No. So I'm
Not
asking you,
recently,
in
actually.
the 1800s, do you actually believe that if a woman committed a mugging, that she would have received the same level of sentencing and punishment as a man committing a mugging, regardless of
I've
whether or not
already-
a man or woman would do it
I've-
more often? I don't
Okay,
know.
husband would go to
I'll
jail
answer.
in
I'm
British
going to
law.
answer your question as soon as you answer to me how this would not be a gender-specific crime under your criteria for witches versus mugging. You still haven't answered that.
That it's so inconsequential, and you don't want to go into the fact that
Then
witchcraft
just bite the
is
bullet and say you
not
misspoke.
crime.
Just bite the bullet and say you misspoke instead of
didn't
being
misspoke.
arrogant erudite.
I didn't misspoke. I didn't misspoke.
Okay, well then explain it. Then explain how they're not gendered under the same criteria. It makes no sense.
Because in the case of witchcraft, there was no crime actually occurring. It was mostly people making
There
shit
was
up.
a crime occurring.
No,
Whether
there
or not you think it was reality,
What was the
it was
crime?
considered a crime. What are you
What were
talking
they
about?
doing? What were they doing?
They were engaging in whatever was considered the practice of witchcraft.
No, the Salem witch trials was almost exclusively mass hysteria because one woman had an.
So what? It was still
or
considered a
maybe
crime. It was still considered a crime. You can't evade that. I don't know what to tell you. You cannot evade. It was considered a crime.
I
The
don't
question
care
were
that it was
these people
considered a
actually
crime.
committing that crime or not?
It was
and in mass,
gender.
they-
Okay, don't you
fact that
understand what
women-
she's saying? She's saying like let's pretend that there was no such thing as stop signs, and people would cross the street and you would burn them for a stop sign that wasn't there. Who cares? It's still considered a crime.
Not a real crime, not a farcical crime that is drummed up and fabricated. In the case of witchcraft, it is a farcical crime.
How would that
is
not be
drummed up and
gender specific?
fabricated. And
You
they
still
were
haven't answered that.
mistrials. There were mistrials constantly because there was a lot of people motivated in this situation, for example, to find women guilty of this for some reason.
Yeah, you've already explained that. But you haven't explained how that wouldn't be gender specific. It makes no sense.
It was
even by our modern standards, it's still a gendered crime because
it makes no
women
sense.
that are getting tied to the stake
What
and
are you
burned. A
talking
crime is
about?
being committed against them, and there's still even by our modern standards, that'd still be a gendered crime.
It's like making shit up as she goes to try to cover it.
No due process in the cases of women who were found. Yes, there were some men, but most of the people who were burned at the stake for being witchcraft doers were women, which is why I'm calling it as a gender-specific thing, because it is a fabricated crime. In the case of mugging, it is not a fabricated.
It's not fabricated. They were accused of a crime, and then they were murdered for the crime. Yes. How is the crime's not fabricated?
Yes.
Whether you think that they're guilty of actually doing it is a totally different thing. It was still considered a crime. It's still gender specific because if you're talking about the majority of it is X person does it, then that would be gender specific. What the fuck are you talking about? Are you retarded? Literally? I don't even know what you're talking about.
It's so funny that you will say these things unironically while you're literally
it is unironic.
And
yes.
false accusations. You're basically being like,
you said this. You said it. I didn't say it. You said it.
I can't with this level of autism. I actually don't.
It's not autistic. You could have just walked it back and said I misspoke and it made no sense. You could have just done that.
I'm not saying that witchcraft wasn't in the law. I'm saying that the crime of witchcraft was typically fabricated because nothing was actually happening. At worst, it was like women tripping on mushrooms. And at most, like there was anything actually seriously happening, it was midwives using herbs to help women not die in birth. So what I'm saying is you're missing all of the social cues here. So when I'm talking about a gender-specific thing, I'm talking about a situation, regardless of whether it was the law, that people fabricated, there were mistrials, and people made up shit to claim that women were witches.
How would that make it not gender specific, you lunatic? How?
She's saying that it makes it gender specific in the case of witchcraft.
Right. Well, if that's the case, then it would make it gender specific in the terms of mugging. What are you talking about?
Is a crime that doesn't happen? Do you think mugging is like not a real crime? Like, is that what you think?
No, but like I think what he's saying is like people who did witchcraft,
like the people on this panel,
they practiced something, right? They practiced spells and all this bullshit.
Yeah, but what we're saying is that the vast majority of
doing
none of this because muggings are happening and witchcraft was not. That's
so people weren't like
considered witchcraft. What they considered witchcraft was happening, and they did prosecute people for it. What reality do you live in?
Witchcraft is women being scapegoated under false accusations.
And men.
Muggings are not men
and
being
men.
Scapegoated. No.
Men can be scapegoated for muggings. What are you talking about?
Hold on, wait. Hold on. Not so erudite. Do you think that they were actually doing anything that would be considered witchcraft in these scenarios, or do you think they were just accusing them of witchcraft with absolutely no evidence?
There was tons of cases that have been unearthed where most of this was mistrials and it was absolutely fabricated based on things like one girl's testimony. The Salem witch trials is an excellent example of mass
That's only one
hysteria.
example of tons.
The
Malfarious Maleficarium, which is called, it's literally the document which talks about how you apply standards to witchcraft. The Malfarious Maleficarium, I'm not kidding. It's not a joke. And it was a crime, and it was gender specific, at least according to your standard. I don't know why you won't just concede the point.
There's nothing to concede to you.
Just double down on the stupidity. That's fine, I guess. I don't know what to say.
I don't know.
All right, I've been trying to get this question in for a while. I have a question for Pxie, Andrew, and the rest of the panel. Let's say a girl punches a guy in the face. Does he get the same punishment as a guy who punches a girl in the face, all other factors being equal?
Yeah. I think, I think some people argue that it should just be like based on the consequence. And sometimes our justice system does like rely on that. So for example, like, if a man punches a man, there's more likelihood, or punches a woman, there's more likelihood of permanent damage. So then you're like trialed for like, not just like assault, but also like, potential murder or whatever. But I think generally speaking, if you were saying all factors being equal, I'm going to include the consequence in that.
Oh, no, I don't mean all, because that's probably not going to happen. I just mean the action.
I was about to say
Yeah,
you're
no,
kind of
absolutely.
losing the gender differences if all else is equal.
Yeah. No, I'm talking about like they don't have a criminal record. They just met that night. I mean, stuff like that. I'm not talking
Yeah.
about actual consequences of the punch.
Yeah, I think what is it? I think they should be treated equally.
Okay, punished equally. What about you, Andrew?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Let's say a girl punches a guy in the face. Should she get the same punishment as a guy who punches a girl in the face?
Yeah, I think that there's virtue in that. Yeah.
Interesting.
I'm sorry,
Does
I'm
anyone-
confused by Pixie's answer. You were saying that like the outcome mattered, but then you're saying that they should be treated equally when like it
Well, I'm
sounds like
saying
you
what
should be
happens
saying
in-
it should matter based on the outcome, right?
Well, I'm saying, well, we kind of divorce this from outcome. It seems like in our justice system, like the outcome of what happens, like does matter, in terms of like the punishment. But obviously that will like change the scenario, right? Like if a woman punches a man so hard that he's gonna get like permanent damage, then she should get as much jail time as a guy who punches a woman and causes permanent damage, you know? So
Yeah,
with all factors being equal, then yeah.
But
they
it's
should
just
be the
statistically
same.
way more likely that a guy punches a girl in the face, he's going to cause way more damage than the opposite.
Yeah, that's the
Well,
reality.
I think
of the
legally
situation.
there should be the same punishment, but like socially, I don't think so.
Well, so
We
I think
shouldn't
that's built
teach
into
guys
We're
his
not
that they
question.
can
looking.
fight
Listen, we're not
girls.
looking at consequences when we're talking about justice necessarily. That's not necessarily what makes something just. Is only what the consequence of the thing.
No, that's why I
is.
said legally it
one of
should
the
be
things.
the
Like
same
if that was
punishment.
if that was the case, you could say, well, the best thing would be like if somebody murders, you murder them. That would be the best consequence. And you could argue successfully, maybe it could be the best consequence, but that doesn't mean necessarily that it's just. So you're talking about justice of a woman punching a man in the face, a man punching a woman in the face. Yes, it's true. A man might do more damage than a woman does, but the justice and punishment ought to be the same if you have a
Facts,
justice
yeah.
system.
Yeah.
So
Well,
a
I mean,
woman
they do
punches a
consider
man.
consequences.
Well,
They do consider
let me hold
consequences.
on. Let me rephrase your question because a woman punches a man as hard as she can, and he gets a bruise from it. A man punches a woman as hard as he can, and she's in a coma for a month. These two people should have the same consequences. You think? Because
No,
the
no,
intent,
wait,
the
wait.
force
There's my
was
No,
the
because
same.
one's
There's
like attempted
minutia.
murder almost there.
Yeah. Hang on, there's minutia there. So if a woman were to punch a man in the face and do the same amount of damage that the man did to a woman, let's say in the same scenario, then yes, you'd give them the same punishment. That seems to be reasonable.
So
But
men
you
have
don't know
more
how much
responsibility
damage you're
because
gonna
they're
cause
bigger
when
and
you
stronger.
commit the action. That's the thing. You don't know.
Well,
When
men
you're
always
punching-
have had more
Okay,
responsibility
but
due
the
to
issue
size
is
and
that
strength.
intent and outcome matter for sentencing, right? So in the case of like, are both guilty?
part of it,
Yeah,
yes.
both are guilty, especially if they both have the intent. But the actual outcome will vary the sentencing. So if a woman punches a man, she'll be found guilty for assault, and she could. But if all she does is bruise, for example, she'll probably get less time than a guy who does the same thing but breaks like her like jawbone or something like that.
Horrible.
He'll probably
Right.
get escalated to aggravated assault because of the outcome,
Yeah.
even though
But the-
both are still guilty of a crime.
Yeah, but the problem that we're talking about here is like a woman runs in with a samurai sword and stabs a man to death, and a man does the same thing to a woman. The chances are she's still going to get a lesser punishment. So even
Yeah,
when
that's
we get to the equality of the issue, justice does not seem to be blind in this issue.
Yeah, I think everyone
Right.
on the panel agrees
Yeah.
with that. The
Yeah.
justice system is very biased.
Well stated. Well stated.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, generally,
Alex.
just everybody in any relationship, don't hit each other at all. What are you, an ape? Like that just anyone within the sound of my voice, don't hit each other. Jesus Christ.
Sorry, Alex. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, duh. Obviously, you don't want to. Obviously, physical violence is never good. I guess it's just interesting because when a guy attacks a girl, because you don't know what's going to happen, you don't know consequences. If you punch a girl in the face, there's a really good chance that you might kill her. She might wind up in the hospital. Versus vice versa, it could happen. It's just a lot less likely to happen.
Yeah.
Oh wow! So we went from witches all the way to domestic violence. Tom, this panel's.
I was
fucking
getting bored of the witches, so I wanted to redirect.
Yeah, I mean, I think the interesting point in here is that, like, from what we understand, men would then have a lot more responsibility in the way that they interact with people than women do. Women can do pretty
Yes.
much the same thing with very little consequence. Men have to have, like, a lot more responsibility because they're going to have a lot more consequences.
Yeah, and I would reference like someone who's a fighter who's a black belt. They might get a bigger punishment than a guy who's a normie for getting into a fight because the consequences for them are higher because they have all this training when it comes to combat.
It would
Yeah, I
only
mean,
depend on if
that's
they actually do more
disputable.
damage. Yeah, I
That's
think if a pro
disputable.
boxer gets into a fight and he decimates the other guy, he'll probably get escalated to a more serious charge because of the outcome. But he'll be similarly guilty to some like random schmuck throwing haymakers.
No, but Kyle, like, let's assume there's the same amount of damage that's done. Pro boxer and a normie, the pro boxer might still get a bigger punishment because he should have known better because there was a higher chance.
Right.
Well, then that's not
Not
justice. That's something other than justice.
Yeah, I don't think in the case of the law. So if it was like a man and a woman again who did the same level of damage, yeah, the women are probably going to get off easier, which is bad, by the way. We should correct that. But if it was a boxer versus like another dude, I don't think I've seen evidence that boxers would get more time just because they're trained.
Yeah, and kind of think about it too, Alex. Think of it this way: it's just you consider it like a Navy SEAL pulls out a gun and shoots somebody in self-defense versus somebody who's not a Navy SEAL. Would the Navy SEAL be held to some higher standard, or should he be? I don't think so. I don't see that as being just.
Yeah, I would agree. I think once it gets to a certain point of like guns and shooting, then it's all so bad that it should be prosecuted evenly.
Yeah. So I think that if we're looking at the descriptor of what is, you're probably right. They would be because it's imperfect, and you have 12 jurors. So descriptively, I think you're probably correct that they might be held to a higher standard, but that doesn't mean they should be as an ought claim.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Pxie, based on your earlier statement, then with like what everybody else just said, like with men have more responsibility in these things, is that the way you think it should be with the criminal justice system? Do you think that's the way it should be built?
I mean, I think when it comes to like acts of physical violence, I guess with great power comes great responsibility in a way, right? So I think
You
if
just
you're a man-
Spider-Man the panel. You just Spider-Man.
Very Uncle Ben.
Yeah.
Nice.
You know,
They did not pay for that promo.
Yeah.
But yeah, men on average are more stronger than women, so they should take that into account when it comes to, physically engaging. I would say something similar with like a very like buff woman or a very strong woman. Like obviously she would have to take into consideration more like her physical actions, how they can impact people.
There's no such thing as a strong woman. Come on. Wait, Tom, can I say whatever I want, or is there certain words I can't use?
I mean, there's
Just the
TOS
phrase.
for
Okay,
both YouTube and Twitch, so
I'll word it correctly. What about grape? Do you think, for example, a man who grapes a woman should get the same punishment as a woman who grapes a man, who pressures him into doing it? Okay, let's talk about, let's say like having sex while they're asleep. So a man has sex with a woman while she's asleep and she goes to the police. Would that be the same punishment as a woman who has sex with a man while he's asleep, in your opinion?
It should be.
well, I mean, again, you're talking about damages from these things. Women are going to have a lot more damages to them, and the outcome is going to be a lot greater than what would happen to a man.
Well, we don't know because it's psychological.
Psychological, yes, but when we're talking
Yeah,
about
I think they
physical
both should
damages,
get
there's
a-
going to
I
be a
think
bigger
they
Just kind of
both
call
set
back
a
to
grape
Andrew's idea of
charge.
justice versus outcome.
I mean, you
They
can
should both get
depends
a
on how
grape
the rape-
charge there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're supposed to, when you're looking at this from a justice perspective, Tom, it's not just damage, right? You have to apply some kind of standard which is fair for all people, or else you can't have justice. What's the point of having law if it's not applied equally across the board? What's the point of that?
Yeah, but I thought you guys all agreed earlier that men would have more responsibility because the outcome is greater than
yes, but I'm talking speaking specifically to justice.
The
Speaking
justice is going
specifically
be-
to justice.
I understand, but the justice is going to be applied to the outcome, right? So you can't separate the two. Justice is about the outcome.
I know,
Justice
but if
is
I
not
punch
always
a girl
about
in
the
her
outcome.
face and
It's
break her
partially about
nose,
the outcome.
and a
Outcome
girl
plays the
punches
role in
me
it,
and
yeah.
breaks my nose, it's the same damage done, same outcome.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry, Pxie, go ahead.
It would depend on the nature of the grape. So, for example, like how violent it is, like if the woman was just like sedated, how much like bruising there is, like, other physical damage. But generally speaking, like I think a lot of rape ends up with like very negative like psychological outcomes, even if like the body gets like hard or wet or whatever, and you don't see like damage internally. That doesn't mean damage hasn't occurred like mentally to extreme amounts.
Sure.
So
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Let's assume there's no physical damage that can be witnessed, and both of them are saying, hey, I'm traumatized by this, right? Psychological damage, you can't really like measure, it's like,
Yeah,
it's
but
like,
just the fact that it's occurred, like both of them, or that they like basically were willing to do that, I think both of them, like, and they both have committed the same action of grape, means that both of them
They should get
be
the same
sentenced
punishment?
same. Huh?
they should get the same punishment, in your opinion?
Yes.
If you want a just society, you would have to do it that way. You can't hold double standards for justice. You can't do it.
Well, you do it all the time. Like a government employee, for example, doesn't get certain whistleblower protections that not or whatever. There's things like that all the time between someone who has a government employee like Edward Snowden had. Like the problem with him is that he had that clearance, so he's not allowed to be leaking those information. Versus me and you just stumble upon that information, then we are more protected. So that happens all the time.
Yeah, but giving a descriptor of how things are is not the same as giving a descriptor of your question, which is how things ought to be. So if you're asking how things ought to be, and you're talking about in the confines of the context of justice, then you can't have multiple punishments tiered in society, or that would be definitionally unjust, right?
So if the standard for justice includes outcomes, that would mean that it's not a double standard. It's a single standard that considers different types of outcomes that would have different punishments for each outcome. No.
It doesn't just consider outcomes, but it's
right,
one
not
point
just
that
outcomes,
it does.
but that's what I'm saying is that is something that would change what justice is in each scenario, and therefore would change. Like if the outcome is changing, then justice would change.
Yeah, but what you're talking about isn't particularly measurable. So trying to measure the distinction between the damage of a woman raping a man versus a man raping a woman is just a subjective analysis. It's not anything which can really be drawn out in any empirical way other than how do you feel? That's it. So I don't know how you would make a formula for it that would be just other than giving them the same punishment for the crime.
I think in general, like, I don't think we actually measure psychological outcomes for varying sentencing at all. There are like decently good measures to measure like severity of like PTSD and stuff like that. But my understanding with essays in general is that like, I don't think I've ever seen them used. Again, I'm not a lawyer, so I could be totally wrong. But I think with the outcomes of like rape specifically, I think it's almost exclusively judge determined, and I don't know how much like psychological effects on the victim are weighed in.
Well, I don't even know. Yeah, I don't even know how you would apply them. I don't even know how you would apply them, except as like a character witness or I don't even know how you would apply that exactly.
But there are like valid measures for like measuring severity, and like there's really, really good PTSD measures that can also catch for like malingering quite easily. So there are these measures. I just think right now with the system, I don't think essay outcomes I've ever heard weighing those things in like the length of sentencing.
Yeah, but those are fallible measures too that are still open to subjective interpretation to a degree.
They all are, Andrew. They're all open to subjective interpretation.
No, if you have a law which is applied equally, that wouldn't be a subjective interpretation. It would be objective. You do X, everybody gets the same punishment.
No, but they do like, so they don't say everyone gets 12 years. They say 4 to 20 years, and the judge.
Well, they can say that, but you also have states which have minimums for certain crimes where you have to give them 10 years, right?
Sure.
So that's at least just to a degree.
Yeah. But there's always some discretion in there as to where they're going to be.
The judge gets a good amount of discretion.
Yeah, well, nothing's ever clean. I agree with that.
The judge is basically a king in his castle.
I think also intent is important. With murder, there's a big difference between accidental murder due to negligence and pre-planned murder. The outcome
is not murder. Then it's not murder. Okay. If it's negligence, it's not murder.
It's manslaughter. Anyway, the point is, the outcome is the same. The person is dead, right? But if someone just basically kills someone due to negligence compared to pre-planning, there will be a big difference in punishment. I think most people would say, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, my understanding when it comes to damages, I think damages are oftentimes made subjectively, right? My understanding is that like oftentimes when it comes to sentencing, again, I could be wrong because I'm not a lawyer or anything, but I think it's the judge that like takes in damages and kind of like looks at the different things, and therefore like a lot of this is going to be subjective, including things like psychological, because the law isn't fallible and we don't just like follow this like black letter to the book. This is why we like.
Yeah, but Kyle, in my analogy, the damages are the same. There's someone dead.
In the case of a murder, sure, but again, like typically in the case of like negligent, like so like manslaughter versus like second versus first degree, they are treated very differently because typically the intentionality is a little bit different.
Right, exactly. That's what I'm saying. The outcome is the same, but the intention matters. It plays a role in punishing the person. So we do this right now.
But if you wanted that to be just, you would still want it to be equal based on intent. That's why you would have the distinction between murder and manslaughter to begin with. And you would always try to apply it fairly across the board if you wanted it to be just.
Yeah, I think with SA, there's less intent specifically for like varying of charges. Like at least with murder, we got like first and second and stuff like that.
Yeah.
My understanding is with SA, we've got like different levels of aggravation and violence associated. But again, that's going to be more, again, connected to outcomes than intention. I think intention in SA is typically just about like guilt or not guilt.
Yeah, and if like I use an extreme example, taking someone like Mike Tyson or someone who's a fighter, who's like a really strong man, punching a woman in the face, and then taking like some chick like Pxie or someone who's like, you know, like no offense, Pxie, you're not super jacked, right? And punching a guy in the face, and it's like both of them are going to get 5 years in jail. Like there's a little bit of a difference there. Like Mike Tyson could have killed that person.
Well,
Pxie probably is not going to really even do a scratch.
The girl's gonna have her head knocked off her shoulders. The dude's gonna just take it. It's different.
And the dude's not. I mean, I understand your guys' arguments.
So
I'm
then,
not gonna
so
say
I
you
don't
guys are
understand. I don't understand. Would you apply that standard to men too? Like if you have a really weak, spindly man and a stronger man hits him in the face, are you going to apply that standard to them too, Alex?
I would look at things like, yeah, if the person's a professional boxer or has fighting experience, yeah.
No, they don't. One's just huge and the other one's not. But they entered into mutual combat. And the one dude got his ass kicked and the other one didn't.
Oh, Andrew, we're not talking about mutual combat here.
Well, but what if you were? What if the woman goes over and punches Mike Tyson in the face and then he turns around and hits her back? That is mutual combat.
He'd for sure bite her ear off. But
Mutual combat is when I say, Andrew, let's fight. We agree to fight.
No, if you punch me in the face and I turn around and engage back with you, you could make the self-defense claim, right? Or you could say in some states you have mutual combat clauses like Nevada, where the penalty is almost nothing because it becomes mutual combat. So nobody gets, basically in any trouble.
I understand what you're saying. Honestly, I don't have a good answer to that. I could see both sides of it.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to go to closing statements. Angela, so I don't really want to give you much more speaking time. You've already taken up a little bit too much.
Angela, you got shut up
just
once
filibustering us here.
Yes, I will give you 30 seconds for a closing statement. Okay, go ahead. You can.
But overall, we're just looking for justice. So it was hard for me to disagree because everyone said everything that I agreed with. So overall, if we're looking for justice for men in the system because it's complete bias, there's nothing to argue with that. So that's my closing statement.
All right, Alex.
Yeah, I think we all agree on this point. That's why I was kind of giving like some hypotheticals because I want to see if we have any small theoretical differences. It seems like we have some, but it's nothing substantial. But yeah, I mean, like, this has been studied pretty extensively. Men get inside and outside divorce court. Men get more severe punishments, more jail time. So it's unfortunate, and it's an unfortunate reality of the criminal justice system we're in today.
All right, SpeakeaZy.
Oh yeah, we all agreed here. It's clear as day that men face more for the same crime. Just like everyone else said, the only way to do justice is if everyone faces the same time for the same crime. And yeah, that's about it for that one.
Cool. Phil.
Well, folks, we've actually come to an unusual consensus here, and I do have to give credit to Andrew for a very well argued point on the idea of what is actual justice. And I don't think a lot of people are going to push back on that very much because now it's the unfortunate reality, like Milton Friedman once said, Nirvana is not for this world. And so we're never going to be able to get a perfect justice system. We can try and push a little bit further, but we are fallen, imperfect human creatures, and we'll never get a fully true justice system. The only justice you'll find is in the Lord Jesus Almighty, folks, and that's the only place you're going to find it. And with that, I yield.
Awesome. Just nodding or shaking your heads. I didn't know. Did we all agree on just what justice was, or did we even get to that?
Well, to a degree we did, but I think that Alex brought up the best challenge, which is a hard one, even philosophically, to kind of contend with, which is when you get into kind of the granular details of how you apply justice as a standard and why we have to give people some kind of discretion. So I thought he made a very good point with that. That's all I'm saying.
All right, Andrew, go ahead.
Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, I think for the most part, my idea of justice is probably fairly milquetoast, and that seemed to be what we were arguing. So, but I do think that Alex brought up some fairly decent challenges to it, which deserve to be tangled with. I'm just saying that overarchingly, if we want a just society and a virtuous society, we have to have some kind of standards which are applied fairly across the board for all men and all women, if justice is the outcome you want. Now, I don't think that society necessarily needs to always be just, but if that's what the outcome is people want, then you would have to. I don't know how else you could do it.
Cool. NotSoErudite.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like there's probably a consensus that men are definitely like biased against. I think that like I'd love our legal system to be like a good representation of justice, but it's definitely not sophisticated and nuanced enough to do so all the time perfectly. So yeah, I don't know.
All right. And then Pxie.
Yeah, I think men are untreated fairly in this justice system. I think a lot of that goes back to like perceptions
Based.
of women and just like this idea that like, oh no, like the little woman, like she could have not possibly done that much damage, when it's like, no, like sometimes women do a lot of damage and they should be treated just as harshly for doing said damage. So I wish we could change that like societal perception, because I think that's why there's like such a big bias.
I'm calling a shootout, Tom, with Pxie.
Okay. I guess we don't generally we don't do them during intros, but nobody's used them, so we're gonna go ahead and do it anyway. So all right,
Yeah.
we're gonna.
I like it. I like it.
Hey!
Oh no, sorry, I messed that up.
My beautiful.
All right, there we go.
So
All right, we got
Pxie,
3 minutes on the clock. Go ahead.
Pxie, what you just outlined was female privilege. So you admit that females have privilege inside of society. So would you then argue that we live under a patriarchy, even understanding that women are privileged as you just stated it?
Yeah, I think what is it? The patriarchy is just talking about like general outcomes, but I think in this enforcement of the patriarchy, we try to like, you know, otherize women so much and otherize men so much to try to like establish like why men should have like this dominance, or why men should have more of these options. And the process of doing so, we end up hurting men and women, because there are some things that should not be otherized. For example, like physical violence, right? So I think like these two views are
So wait a
still
second. So
consistent.
wait, you think that the patriarchy, which is this massive system which is run by men for the purposes of
It's not just
oppressing,
run by men.
hang
The
on,
patriarchy is
hang
run
on.
by men
Well,
and
you'd have
women.
to admit that it's at least mostly run by men. There's no
It
way
mostly-
around that.
It's mostly, what is it? Society is run by both men and women.
It's
It
mostly run by
benefits
men. It's mostly run by men.
Okay, well, we just have a fundamental disagreement.
No, there's no
here.
fundamental disagreement.
Yes, it
Society,
is.
are you saying that society is not mostly run by men?
I'm saying society.
Okay, great. So if it's mostly run by men,
shootout, right?
then men
Yeah,
are.
you gotta let her respond. You gotta let her respond.
Okay.
Go
Well,
ahead.
wait a second. If it's a shootout, we have 3 minutes. Why do I have to let her respond? It's a fight, Tom.
It is moderated. I understand, but
All
it
right,
is just
fine.
the two of you. Go ahead.
Okay, right? Society is run by both men and women, right? And I don't think there's any way to like go against this, because guess what? Like women are supposed to be in this nurturing role. They're supposed to like take care of children. That has a huge societal influence.
Yeah, but in positions of authority, which would be what was necessary for the patriarchy to be oppressing everybody. The positions of authority are mostly held by men. Yes or no?
That's different than just like women.
Yes or no?
Are
Yeah,
men
mostly
are
held
only
by
running
men. Yes or
society.
no? Yes or no? Or is the positions of authority mostly held by men?
Sure, positions of like
Great.
public authority.
So all these positions that are held by men, the patriarchy benevolently gives women all of this privilege. Isn't that kind
There
and
is
benevolent
multiple
of
levels
them?
privilege. That's
So
right here.
isn't the
In some ways,
isn't the
affects
patriarchy
women and affects
benevolent?
men. Wait, let me finish. This is called benevolent sexism, right? So it's this idea that like, oh, there's these
Well, that's what
underlying-
you're espousing, not me.
Yeah, no,
It's your
benevolent
position.
sexism definitely exists. However, like the idea of the patriarchy is who is this benefiting the most often, right? And it tends to be men. It benefits most often, but that doesn't mean that there's examples.
Doesn't sound like it's benefiting men the most often. We seem to be going to prison, have the most dangerous
You just
jobs and
literally
everything
said,
else.
Men are the ones who are like most likely to be like in political like positions
Yeah,
of
30
power.
seconds.
They hold all the power. So how are you going to say that and say it doesn't?
Being in
benefit men?
positions of authority doesn't mean that you don't have female privilege. Just because you're
I don't
inept,
disagree with
just
that.
because
I
you're
completely
inept at
don't
being
disagree with that, but you're
in
the one
positions
saying,
of
like, oh,
authority
no,
doesn't mean
men are
anything.
in positions of authority and power, and now you're saying, but actually, this all benefits women.
It seems to. What's the
Do you not
benefit for
think
the man?
people in
What?
positions
So
of
what?
power
So
are
it
the
seems
ones
like the
who benefit the
patriarchy's.
most? Do you
it's
not
so-
think if I have
so
the
I just need
power
you to
do
concede.
everything, I have the most power. Like
Okay,
that
let
is
me just
literally
finish my point and I'll let you
one-
respond. I'll let you
Okay,
respond. I
I'll let you
promise.
respond.
So I just need you to concede then that the patriarchy is giving women privileges.
Yeah,
It's
the patriarchy
privileging women.
definitely can
So the
benefit women
patriarchy
in
is
certain ways.
benevolent, right?
Yeah, benevolent sexism
Yes,
is a thing.
thank you.
I wouldn't say
Yes.
overall it's benevolent, but
That's
there
all I
are
wanted.
examples of benevolent sexism. I never have disagreed with that.
All
This
right.
is not like a dunk. Like you could have asked me this earlier, and I would have been
Benevolent
like, yeah, in
patriarchy.
certain ways
Thanks.
that benevolent sexism occurs for sure.
Appreciate it.
Dang it! Why did it put everything in different places? This was bad planning.
Seemed like a good idea at the time, Tom.
Yeah, it sounded smart when I came up with the idea, but now I'm okay.
At least on this one, you can do all the switching. That's better than Discord, right?
Yes, that's what I love about this. Pixie, did you actually do your closing statement? You did, right?
Well, I was doing it, and then I got Shootout.
Would you like to finish?
Well,
Yeah,
yeah,
hold on.
I'll just wrap it up quickly. So yeah, so I think men and women are both negatively affected by the patriarchy in this process of trying to like justify why one gender should be more power than the other. These justifications just end up hurting both, right? Because we end up like otherizing the gender so much to the point that we think that women can't do as much damage as men when they absolutely can. And I think that's dangerous, and that's something we should change.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think on the next one, I'll probably just mute everybody instead of taking everybody off the screen. It looks better, but yeah, it's a little bit too much trouble. All right, so the last topic we have, everybody except for Andrew and Pixie.
By the way, I just wanted to say real quick, I'm sorry, Tom, to cut in, but the only reason I was picking on you, Pixie, is because we had this shootout thing, and it's like, we might as well fucking use it at some
It's okay.
point.
It was fun. I liked it.
Yes, Andrew and Pixie are the only ones who have used their shootouts now. So
Well, she hasn't used hers. I just used mine.
yes, when you use yours,
No,
whoever
he
you
uses
use it
both.
against, it takes theirs.
Because I'm part of the benevolent patriarchy, I would never take that away.
Well, you did. You did, unfortunately, because you live in
Alright.
a normal patriarchy.
Last topic, it's titled, Are Women Attracted to Older Men? Why or why not? We can include, like, men being attracted to younger women. Obviously, there's going to be a back and forth on those. So we're going to start with Alex playing with fire. You are very blurry, sir. You need
My
glasses.
camera does this shit sometimes. It'll get into focus. So are women attracted to older men? Well, some of them are, some of them aren't. I pulled up a little statistic on this. 56% of women prefer dating older men. And of that 56, the majority, 56, like men who are 1 to 4 years older than them. So not too much older. 30% like men who are 5 to 9 years older, and 14% like men who are more than 10 years older than them. So it seems like, yes, there are women who like older men, but generally speaking, women prefer a guy who's like maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 years older than them. In terms of why, I think it comes down to experience. I think they think the guy's going to be more mature. She thinks the guy's going to have his, financial shit together, that he's going to be, just more grounded, more dominant. So yeah, I would say that's basically my take on that.
Awesome. Angela.
I would say generally, yes. I think women are attracted to older men. I'm not specifying exactly how far off, but I think that's just older men generally exhibit like that dark triad traits basically, and I think like women tend to look for that when they lack some sort of masculine figure at home or within their experience of being a woman. But yeah, I think just you're looking for like some sort of generosity when it comes to competence, and that's it.
All right, Phil.
You're muted.
Well, I wasn't going to tell him. I was just going to...
That would have been funnier.
You're muted
That's
on
all right.
StreamYards.
Did I mute? Oh, sorry.
All right,
Sorry.
can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, you're
Go
good.
ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. Like
All right, 30 seconds, sir.
Yes, this is something that really can't be disputed. I've seen it in my own life, and I've seen it in other places. In the sexual marketplace, if you will, men arrive poor and rich over time. And on the sexual marketplace, women arrive rich and grow poor over time. So there's going to be this interesting intersect all throughout the dating market. And that's just something that I've seen in my own life and in multiple other settings.
And why? Real quick.
Oh, why? Because men, as they grow older, they acquire more resources, they get more experienced, they actually have more outward showings of good character. And so those are things that are going to attract people, not just women, but people in general. And women will be part of that. So yeah, the older you get, the more experience you get, the more resources you get, the more social pull, social cachet, if you will. Like, a 55-year-old dude can probably walk into a bank and borrow 100 grand a hell of a lot easier than a 25-year-old dude.
Awesome.
It's just those kind of things.
SpeakeaZy. 30 seconds, sir.
Yeah, so yeah, women are attracted in general to older men, but it's not because of their age, like not necessarily because they're older. It's because what comes with them being an older man: competency, wealth, stability. family values, these things. This is the reason why women in general are attracted to older men.
All right. And Pxie.
Yeah, and I feel like Speakeasy basically nailed it. I think they are generally attracted to older men because they tend to be more mature than younger men, and I think women are especially pressured to mature faster, to take on these like roles faster. So I think that's what ends up happening. They're just attracted to men who are more serious.
Awesome. And NotSoErudite.
Yeah, I think this goes twofold. I think in general, women tend to select slightly older mates, and men often tend to select slightly younger mates. So kind of both are slightly getting what they want out of it. I think the average age discrepancy between heterosexual couples is like 2.3 years. So yeah, they definitely prefer to. Why is that? Probably stability markers for men, and probably markers of like youth and attractiveness for men wanting younger women.
All right. And Andrew.
My position is every woman that I've ever met and how they feel about Sean Connery, and that should demonstrate it perfectly fine for everybody.
That's pretty good.
Based.
All right. So I guess since everybody obviously agrees on the fact that women do like older men and generally agree that, like, you know, on reasons for why are the reasons different between men and women? Why are men not looking for women that are older at the same rate as women are looking for men that are older? Not so weird.
I actually want to challenge Angela on something she said.
Oh yeah,
is
go
it
ahead.
cool? I don't. I think
Shoot it out, Alex.
I
Do
think
it.
you probably. I don't think it'll be necessary. It depends on her answer. I think you probably misspoke when you said dark tribe traits. But what did you mean by that?
So when I said generally, I think that when women look for men as far as like a leadership role, it could go really far left or really far right. So I generally would say looking at someone to lead a relationship, it could go kind of south, and that's why like I kind of push against women going dating men that are too far off the spectrum as far as like an age gap. If there's like a 20-year, 30-year age gap, I don't understand the success in that relationship
But
because.
you said women are looking for older men because they have dark tribe traits.
Well, not because they are looking for that. They just happen to exhibit it, and it mask off this idea that he's masculine and that he's a man, that he can, you know, be competent. And I think that it's a gray area that you probably can't define as a woman, especially if you lack the masculinity in your life to define like what is healthy and what isn't. That's why I say that.
Do you think older men are more likely to be dark tribe than younger men?
Yeah.
What is that claim based on?
Okay, so I would say based on, no offense to anybody, but I think like the older you get, you could, I mean, I'm just broadly saying this, it could be a combination of just bitter, maybe like a divorce. It could be what you think, because as a man, I think that if you're leading any type of relationship, if you've done trial and error, if you failed, I'm not saying you can probably do it right the second time or the third time based on the stats of these types of relationships that we see failing. And I would say it could easily turn into a dark trait that you could exhibit as a man. But
Yeah,
I wouldn't say it's just older or younger. I would just say just dating as you get older as a man. So I wouldn't just differentiate saying it's just younger men or older men.
Okay, because I was confused by your explanation. For anyone who's not familiar, dark tribe is narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. These are things that you're generally born with. They can develop. And I don't think there's any correlation between age and dark tribe traits. If you can show me evidence of the contrary, I'd be willing to change my position. But I have not seen any evidence that older guys are more likely to be narcissistic or psychopaths.
Yeah, but I would also say, like, if you define it in that sense, I get it. But I think, like, for women, all of the men who exhibit, like, being narcissistic or any sort of psychopathic, you have this, like, the confidence is what we're essentially looking for. You see women that are attracted to, like, assholes, not the asshole that she likes,
Right.
it's the confidence
Okay.
that he exhibits. And that's really what I mean when I say that.
That's why I said I think you misspoke, because you're just talking about confidence and dominance and assertiveness. You're not talking about dark triad traits.
Yeah, but no, they fall into that group because you don't realize what you're looking for as a woman. I think like you're looking for the confidence, and usually when you exhibit those narcissistic behaviors, I think that's what comes with it.
They're sheep and they're wolves.
But the question was initially, why are
one are you?
women attracted to older men? So if your statement is to be true, then that would assume there's a lot more dark triad older men than there are younger men, right? Because it wasn't why women are attracted to men. Why are women specifically drawn to older men?
Okay, maybe I probably didn't. Yeah, I'm probably wrong on that. Then I'll take that full.
No worries.
Okay. So yeah, why is there a difference between what men like and what women like? Why do men like younger women? Why do women like older men? Speakeasy.
Well, like I was saying with the older men thing, it's because in general, older men tend to have more of their shit together. In the easy
Yeah,
way to
but
say
why
it.
don't men like older women then? Because older women tend to have their shit together.
Yeah, well, but that's like,
They want
especially
different
with
things.
like the initial attraction. This isn't what like men are looking for.
Sure, that's a descriptive. I'm asking why though.
Because
Like, why is that
Because-
the case? You're just repeating the
Oh,
same thing back
well,
to me. I'm asking
because-
why is that the case?
Well, because men are naturally attracted to beauty and fertility. This is biologically wired in us. So, like, from 18 to 25 years old is everyone in general. For women, this is the peak of their beauty. So this is why men from ages 18 to 60 years old, they all choose the same demographic for attraction.
No, it's because of fertility. It's a fertility thing. It's biologically made up. Of course, older men with resources are still, especially if they don't have children, they're going to go after fertility. So fertility is associated with youth and beauty. So it's not complex. Whether you're a creationist like myself or an evolutionist like probably a lot of people on this panel are, the answer is still going to be the same either way. It's tied into fertility. Men's fertility is basically infinite as far as their lifespan is concerned, and women's is not. It's limited. So it makes sense from an evolutionary standpoint why it would be that women have evolved to have this kind of attraction towards older men. It would also make sense from the creationist standpoint as to why that was instilled in both sexes as well.
What would be the logic from a creationist perspective? I'm just curious.
What do you mean? What would the logic be
Well,
as far as why did God create men and women under these
No,
dynamics
why
for
would,
fertility?
from a creationist perspective, women be attracted to older men?
So this opens up an entire theological can of worms, which would take us back to Adam and Eve and the fall of man and all of it. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant to the point. I'm just saying that under both points, it's coherent as to why this would be the case.
Okay. I was just curious because I understand how it makes sense from an evolution perspective. But
From a creationist perspective, they can basically say God made it that way because God decided to make it that way.
I was about to say, one is saying evolution.
Well, no,
made
I
it-
wouldn't make that argument if I was making the argument. I just don't think that it's particularly relevant.
Okay.
That's fair. I'm just telling Alex, like, fundamentally would come down to, like, God can kind of design what he wants in a creationist landscape.
Yeah, I honestly was just curious about that. I'm not even trying to like.
Yeah, well, I mean, woman's fertility, was once infinite. It may not have been ever anything that was designed to have been stifled at all. So there's reasons behind this, but that's a whole theological can of worms. I'm just saying from both perspectives, it does make sense as to why this would happen.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, in terms of why, it just comes down to men and women generally value different things. Men are primarily looking at fertility and beauty, kind of like some people mentioned. Women place much more importance on stability and confidence, and to some extent resources, right? So it's just we're looking at different things. That's why men generally do not prefer older women unless you're like going for a MILF or something like that. And women generally do prefer older men. But again, according to the study I quoted, it seems like they don't want a really old guy. Like most women who want older men, they want a guy who's like 3 or 4 years older than them.
By the way, Tom, this is fucking boring. Can we talk about anything else
Yeah, I
besides
feel like
something
we're
we
gonna
fucking
agree
agree
on
on?
this.
Bravo!
We're
I'm
all
actually
gonna-
surprised because, like, anytime I talk about this on my channel, I have, like, my entire audience, regardless of who it is, right and left, lose their freaking minds. Me saying exactly the same things that literally everybody here is saying. They all freaking freak out. This is
I don't want to go to a
What is
panel.
it?
called-
And when
Your
you're
panel
curious
called
what
the
their responses are
Shootout.
to you
Like-
when they lose
Yeah,
their
what is
shit.
it?
that this is socialized into us, that, like, men, or that a lot of this came because of Christianity, that Christianity kind of instilled, like, older men wanting to be with younger women, and so through the
You're gonna have to
patriarchal
contend
lens,
with a lot
they-
of pagan religions that also have the exact same
Oh, yes.
dynamic. In
Well, I
fact,
don't think
if you look back in time across universally, in fact, the age gaps were larger, like much larger between relationships. But that's in part because
Significantly.
the way marriages are set up in the past versus now is like super.
Yeah, I don't
Like-
think anyone on the panel is going to make that argument. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Just everyone here is a little too based for that.
There's probably like this is the issue with evolution and social structuring is like they feed into each other. Like the things that evolve are also response to the environment that we're in, and so they're like always neutral. So is it possible that like in a technological landscape where like fertility ages of women are just like broadening and broadening due to like interventions and stuff like that, we are seeing more and more like, for example, hypogamous relationships, so women dating younger men. I wouldn't be surprised to start seeing that steadily increasing because again, it's
honestly just a reaction to the landscape and environment that we're existing within. Relationships just tend to reflect that. So we have less limiters, and therefore you'll probably see equaling of age of relationship.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
but
under
not
the
for our, like,
evolutionary purview, it's still biologically would be instilled inside of men to still go after what they consider to be the most fertile, and the most fertile are going to be young, youthful women. That's always going to be the association, regardless of technology. That's why women, as they age, utilize technology to try to hide their age. I mean, that they literally do this nonstop.
The issue is like it's a bit of a slightly fundamental misunderstanding of like the way that like evolutionary psychological principles like both develop and perpetuate within society.
No, it's not. What's the what am I saying that you think is incorrect here?
Wait, okay.
So like I think you're establishing like a fundamentalism argument, right? Where like there's this like fundamental, very old system that's driving males' mate preferences. Am I understanding you correctly?
No, I'm specifically making an argument that through natural selection under the evolutionary worldview, it would be a necessary entailment that the reason that almost all men have these attractions towards young, hot, beautiful women is likely due to the fact that they're the most fertile, and that you're not going to engineer that out of them, even through probably every form of social anything that you can do. And you're kind of making the argument, well, if technology increases and men begin to psychologically associate women with being able to produce longer, that you'll start to see these gaps kind of enclose. But I still think that men will always have preference for these younger, hotter women under that model. They would kind of have to.
Not necessarily, right? Because evolution just responds to the environment of the species. I think like the like have you guys ever heard of
but
the
what's the
super lions?
mechanism? But what's the mechanism for it? The mechanism for the environmental selection is natural selection. So we have not naturally selected out all of the men who want to fuck young, hot women yet. Now,
do you think that social structures are part of natural selection?
Some time.
I think that takes millions of years, and it has to associate with the biology.
Yeah. So that's what I was saying, that you're establishing basically a fundamentalist argument that this structure that's driving the male's preferences is really old and very slow to
Well, what's fundamentalist about it?
Yeah, but don't you think
like what are you talking about?
You're like, don't you think though, like women are still always gonna want like a cross and above, right? They're not gonna, you just argued that like the missing of masculinity right now is what's causing a lot of the divorces, right?
Yeah,
so like
contributing to it.
So like I don't think men are gonna be able to just stop being masculine, and women are gonna just change their mind about that, right? So like why would men just stop wanting the younger, hotter women?
Right.
Just because they can have kids older.
Because of a number of things. Because again, natural selection is just what was sexually viable in the environmental landscape. So for example, if it's really hard to like actually beg and get a young woman to stick with you and have your children because she has birth control, it might be the case that men will over time start shifting to slightly prefer older mates because it's more likely to get an older woman.
No, they're attracted to the older men. They're not begging. You understand the difference? They've both been naturally selected for these things under your purview.
You're misunderstanding me. When I say beg, I'm not meaning like, please, sir. I said beg as in like, he got that girl. That's what I meant. I was just using like a colloquialism.
Okay, but
like that happens now.
The
guy can't get the hot young chick, he settles for the older chick. Like that. Right, that happens now. Women are the selectors, right?
Yeah, so what I'm saying is that there's a really bad misconception when it comes to evolution that like basically every way that psychological phenomena play out will always be the same because it's really fundamental and old. The issue is that evolution works in a number of steps. So number one and most important to all of this is epigenetics, which really has to do with the social construction of the society. So in general, for example, men need to compete along prestige structures of a society, but prestige changes by culture. So right now, prestige mostly has to do with resource acquisition and typically like some sort of level of like confirmed future resource acquisition. So like having a job and having some money and stability, right? But in the past, that would have looked a little bit differently. For example, a high male prestige back in like a warrior tribe would have been a guy who was very successful in war times and brought home a lot of riches and like things to like take care of it. Yes, Phil, exactly.
But not so erudite. Like but wait a second, not so erudite. Yes, epigenetics may be important to the evolutionary model, but it still has to conform to what's biologically viable. And so this is why you see these sorts of social constructions happen around men who are much stronger, so they're dominant. So of course they go along social structures. This still kind of begs the question as to why you think that men in any time in your mother's lifetime, or your child's lifetime, both ways. At what point do you think they're going to start favoring older women over younger, hotter women? That's bizarre.
So I'm outlining why that could be the case because, again, evolution is just a natural response to the environment that you're in. So if young women are almost always on birth control and aren't willing to settle and have your kids, then more and more men are going to be successful if they select slightly older mates who are willing to have their children and are not on birth control, which is
I
going
think
to
they would
create a
select
pressure.
them. I think they would select them, but that doesn't mean that would be their preference.
Well, the thing is that males are just going to shift their preference to what is sexually viable for procreation necessarily. And so in the system, yes.
Over millions of years, maybe.
No. So
yes.
No.
But even then, it'll just fall right back the minute that all of your, policing of what you're trying to do goes away. What happens when a pig escapes its pen? In 3 weeks, it goes feral again after 10,000 years of selective breeding and our attempts to try and make it our little pink little food source. If a pig gets out within 3 fucking weeks, it starts going feral and starts rooting around and it goes wild again. And its offspring will even have tusks. So all of our attempts to try and make the new whatever man isn't going to work.
Actually, this is to my point because pigs with no tusks are very unsuccessful the moment they're not in
still root for
being
grubs.
tamed. So this is a really big misconception about the way evolution works, right? We think that evolution is always this really slow doddering thing. But there's a really interesting case, for example, of these lions that got trapped on an island with just buffalo in the African plains, and they've already evolved to be significantly larger. They have higher testosterone levels across the board. They're basically like jacked super lions. It's kind of cool, actually. You should look them up. But
and they still probably like to have sex with young hot lionesses.
Hey, but what I'm outlining is that the
like, what do you want?
Hold on, because
it's a chapter of The Lion King they don't show you.
I beg of you guys to not weaponize your lack of understanding. What I'm saying.
Oh, right. I just don't understand that men don't like to fuck young hot women. I just don't get it, NotSoErudite.
Can I get in here for a second?
I just don't get it.
If I can just finish this point. What you're not understanding with the lions is really big. What we're talking about is major phenotypic and neurological changes to the lions, right? This is a really big deal. We're talking about different endocrine secretions in female lions specifically within a year of 30 years. That's actually crazy. It's breaking all of our fundamental assumptions about evolution because we had no idea.
Which still has nothing to do with what we're talking about. Then explain how you're not going to get a change of kind in lions where lions stop trying to have sex with the youngest, most fertile lions they can have sex with. Same thing with men and women right now, current day. Even if you're talking about phenotypical changes, which are happening on the microevolutionary scale, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Just to clarify,
you would have to demonstrate that there would be
what I'm
such
saying is-
rapid evolutionary
Hold on,
changes.
wait, hold on. Let me clarify this real quick. All right, BPF, are you saying that this is so fundamental that, when she's giving examples of a ton of other things that are obviously going to change?
Yeah,
this
no,
is one
that's
thing that is
her
so
examples
fundamental
are
that it's
floundering.
not going to change.
Here,
Is
let me
that what you're
repeat
saying?
back the actual
Wait,
position.
Tom, can I use my?
Because
can I use
she
my?
was,
You're right, Andrew. At some
Can I
point,
use
you'll-
my
yeah,
shit
she's
out
just
for other people?
floundering.
I'm
Just
not
floundering.
floundering. I
Listen,
just
she's
think
saying
it's
she
really-
claimed this. She claimed originally
Okay, I wanna
that
use it.
technology, that through the use of technology,
Okay, let him finish, and then-
as women's fertility were to be elongated artificially, that
No.
men would start
You have a
selecting for that
misunderstanding
more
of science.
over the younger, hotter women. That's insane. That's insane.
So what you have is a misunderstanding of evolutionary science that is totally fine.
Sure, I
because
do.
This is just a-
Demonstrate what I don't understand then.
Okay, so what I'm saying is that human beings' evolutionary adaptations can happen really fucking fast because we didn't expect lions to
It's
be able to.
possible that they
We
can,
always- Yes, that's all I'm saying. I'm
but
not
it's
saying-
just possible only.
no, wait,
Maybe.
no. That's literally my argument. I'm not saying in the next 50 years that men are going to be looking at
Well,
their
then
grandma
it would take
and
so millions of years, like I said, maybe.
No. What I'm outlining to you is you're saying it must take millions of years. And I'm telling you, your claim is that it cannot happen fast. And I am telling you,
It won't
you're
happen fast, no.
correct about this, right? That it has
And we
to
were
happen
talking
for
about
millions.
technology especially,
You're
and men are not going to, in a micro evolutionary way, suddenly change the sex selection to go for older women over younger, more fertile women.
Absolutely they can. Absolutely they
Then
can.
demonstrate it. Demonstrate it. Demonstrate it with any animal species anywhere.
Literally
How-
just
how
did
about
with
No,
lions.
you didn't. You showed that lions got bigger and stronger, not that they
Okay.
were selecting
Alex,
for more
who do you
alpha
want to
for
Wait, I
use?
want to
spring.
jump in here. I'm going to jump in here for a
Fascinating
second. I'm
topic.
so
I
sorry.
You never demonstrated
Okay.
that. You're full of
Epigenetic,
shit.
you need to understand that epigenetic adaptations in humans happen over a generation or two. This is why intergenerational trauma is really important to
So
understand
what?
for social groups.
So what?
Jump in
So
there,
what
man.
I'm saying is that your presumption, your fundamental assumption that evolution must occur over millions of years is factually incorrect.
I never said that. I just
Particularly
stated what microevolution was,
mate
but I
selection is
still
a
made the
smaller
the
variable
point.
than
Yeah,
the
no.
endocrine secretion
No.
of a lion.
Mate
Yes, it
selection
is.
is still going to be based around fertility, not so erudite.
How do you think we pick up on fertility specifically?
By
What's
young,
going
youthful,
on?
beautiful shit. That's
What-
how. That's why
Okay.
you women all hide your age.
Alex, who did you want to use
Symmetry
this
is
shootout
one
with?
of them.
Okay,
Symmetry
children
is one of them.
specifically. Which neurological correlates are going on? Is it cortisol that's driving a lot of this? Is it like the dopaminergic system?
What does
What's
that have to do
driving-
with anything?
You're-
Answer
I'm
to my
asking you.
question.
I'm asking
Answer
because I
to
want
my
know what-
question. Stop asking me questions. Why is it that you actually believe that through the usage of technology, which is your original claim, that you wouldn't be surprised to begin to see a trend of men going after older women in lieu of younger, more attractive women? That's the
Because-
part you keep pivoting away from this.
Because evolution doesn't select for fertility, it exclusively selects for mate success. That's it. All it selects for is people having more babies. It doesn't care
Well,
about
then that would be fertility.
no, but
More
okay,
babies is
hold on.
fertility.
Hold on, we
No,
gotta
but
let
what
other
What kind
people
of
get in.
midwittery is
Pxie,
this? You just
Pxie, go
contradicted
ahead.
yourself in one sentence.
no.
Pixie,
No.
please.
Yeah.
We got to let other people jump in. Pixie,
All right.
go ahead.
Okay. So basically, I don't necessarily know if men are going to get with like women who are older than them per se, but I do think that there is something to be said that people have started marrying older. Usually it's within the same age bracket, right? So men are usually looking for women like 2 to 4 years younger, but they're not looking for women like 10 years younger, even though like theoretically speaking, a man in his 30s, that would be like a more fertile woman. And there are evolutionary reasons for this. So you can make evolution arguments why it's not necessarily only fertility, right? Because there's only something to be said about, yes, a woman can have a baby, but is that baby going to thrive? Is that baby going to be able to spread your genes afterwards, right? So fertility is not the only marker of success, right? When it comes to raising children. Another one is like, let's say maturity, right? To a certain limited amount. A woman who has a child at 28 is much more psychologically developed than a woman who has a child at 20, right? So there is an argument to be made that's like not as black and white as just like, oh, fertility is like the marker period, because people want to usually raise children that are going to be competent and also survive and thrive and spread their genes forward and onward. And that's why right now you see in like developed countries developed countries in general, people are having children at later stages because they're more stable, because those children have better outcomes, because it just makes more sense.
So, Andrew, do you know the difference between fertility and fitness from an evolutionary standpoint?
That's not what you said. What you specifically
That is
just
exactly
said.
what- answer the
No,
question.
I'll quote it. I'll actually quote it because I took a note. I took a note. Here's what you
brought
know.
the receipts.
I'm not going to let you straw man my
Can I use
position.
my shootout for
Your
Tyler and
own
Andrew?
position.
I'm using my
Oh
shootout.
no!
Can
you
we
can't
use our
it
shootouts for other people?
No, you
Oh,
can't do that. Sorry.
Don't be a coward and answer the
Me and
questions.
Alex both
and
wanna
I'll do
throw a pistol into
I
this.
can't use a shootout on Andrew.
Yeah, you can use your shootout.
I'll use a shootout on Andrew.
Okay.
Sweet.
Answer the
Oh,
question.
there we go.
Okay, so you're.
What is the difference between?
Hang on. Wait, not so
didn't do
erudite. Wait till he gets the camera fixed.
I'm
Just
sorry.
mute
Go
us.
ahead.
Just mute us all. Just
That's
mute
what
us
I'm
all.
doing.
All right. So your position on this specifically, and you just contradicted it 1 minute ago, was you said it's not all about
It's about
having
what is the
children or
difference
fertility.
between
It's about
fertility
having
and
babies,
fitness?
which would be fertility.
No, it's not. Answer the
Well, then
difference
what is
between
it?
fertility and fitness. What is the difference? I'm asking
Yeah.
you. Do you know
Well,
the difference?
fitness,
between fertility
yeah,
and fitness?
fitness would be part of fertility.
No. What is the
Yes.
difference between the two? Why are they used as different words? They're not the
What do
same
you mean?
thing.
The use difference in what context?
What does fertility mean, and what does fitness
For-
mean from
for-
an evolutionary
I-
standpoint?
I don't know what the evolutionary term for fitness would be, except survival of the fittest, maybe, if that's an incorporation to fitness. But explain what you're talking about. Fitness in what
Do you know the
context?
difference between fertility?
Don't ask me what I
and
know the difference. Just make your point.
I'm just confirming that you don't.
I
know
just
the
confirming that you need to make a point.
Okay, so fertility is how easy it is for a female to get pregnant and make it to
Mm-hmm.
term. Fitness is for how likely the offspring is to survive and multiply.
Okay, so you're still talking about fertility. So you still need fertility in order to have offspring so that they can even have a shot at survival.
Sure, you need to be able to.
And then the
conceive
mechanism, which would be survival of the fittest, is that if you're making non-viable offspring, you're going to be selected out. That would be the evolutionary mechanism.
It is. So these components, while they work together, are different and important to understand. A hyena is a really good example of something that has very poor and bad fertility, but very high fitness of pups, because the female hyena has to give birth basically through a penis.
That
So the
doesn't
others
mean
die.
that the hyenas aren't still selecting for the most fertile mates. That's
No, they're
ridiculous.
selecting for the most fit mate. They typically select for much larger females because larger females are able to carry to term.
So to
and are more
them,
likely
that
to be successful
represents
in birth.
fertility and survival.
No.
Got it.
No, again, fertility is very different than fitness. Fitness
Oh,
includes
God.
things like
It's-
energy
this-
efficiency.
You're
Resilience,
literally splitting
adaptability.
hairs at this point over nothing.
We're
The
talking.
hyena, so that you're saying the hyena
Hold on,
finds
I
the
gotta
bigger,
get
stronger
to it.
hyena to
Just
be
allowed
more
to gish
attractive
gallop
to
the whole
breed
time.
with.
You can't just be allowed to gish gallop the whole time.
I'm
No.
not gish galloping. I'm directly
difference-
Okay, let her
responding.
respond.
When we're talking about fitness, which is really important, is the survivability of the creature. So you're saying all that matters is fertility. Everything's just fertility. That's a ridiculous claim, because all that matters for evolution is what leads to the babies both surviving and then later multiplying.
So
And
the
all that
hyena-
matters, that's what gets selected.
So is the hyena selecting the large hyena because it thinks that hyena is not fertile?
30 seconds left.
So you don't understand evolution.
Answer
at
my
all.
fucking question.
You're trying to
Answer my
fertility.
fucking question. Don't pivot. Is it
You're-
selecting the other hyena because it thinks that other hyena is not fertile?
No.
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 Thank
It's
you.
because
Thank
because
you.
it's most likely to
So
be
fertility is still what's pivotal, just
No,
because they
it's
select
not.
for better
No,
mates,
it's
just
not.
like humans
No,
do, by the
it's
way.
not.
Humans do the same thing for viable
Just
offspring.
keep saying it right, and I'm sure at some point people believe you. Fertility is different
ridiculous.
than fitness, because fertility is about the capacity for things to just have to get pregnant, right? So, for example, some creatures rely.
I'm glad that
exclusively-
hyenas find bigger hyenas to
For
be attractive.
example, the sunfish is an example of something that relies exclusively on just fertility and number of eggs. It has
Fertility,
almost no
yeah.
concern about fitness. However,
Fertility.
in the case of the Homo sapiens, fertility matters a lot less than fitness, because we invest 18 years into the success of our millions. In the case of the sunfish, they have 300 million eggs. They don't give a fuck about fitness. They just
So
hope
what?
statistically. that
Yeah,
one
so
of the
what? Then none of this makes your point. You're just
Yes, it
rambling.
does.
You're just
You don't-
rambling and babbling now.
Hyenas have not selected for fertility for thousands of years. They've selected for big, strong women because they are more fit.
So they find big, strong women to be attractive inside of their male hyena brains. That's what they find attractive. So that's what they're attracted to. Just like with men being attracted to young, hot fucking women. What part are you missing?
You're still not understanding the difference.
What? No, I understand your point. It's just a non-point. What you did was you tried
It's
to make
not
a semantic argument that had nothing to
No.
do with anything.
No, because
And
you
it blew up in your face.
No, everything has to do with fertility, because you're claiming the only reason that men select younger women is because of fertility. However, fitness is way more
Yeah, in
important.
this species, yes.
Fitness can change based on the environment that you were in.
You
If
just
have
got done
somebody-
saying that human beings don't select for fitness. Now you're going to contradict that
I
too?
literally said human beings do dominantly.
No,
select
your
for
exact
fitness.
words were they don't. Maybe you misspoke.
Do. Maybe I misspoke. They absolutely do.
Okay, so
select for
I
fitness.
agree. I would agree that you would look for fitness, but you'd also look for youth and beauty to go along with that fitness, what you're attracted to. You're just making the claim that hyenas are attracted to big, bulky ass other hyenas. That's what the male's attracted to.
Fertility is one component of fitness. That's it. That's what I'm outlining. Fertility is one component of fitness.
But I think that the
Fitness
primary
matters
thing
way
is
more.
that are they more attracted to the bigger women in their species that are unfertile or the ones that are fertile? I would guess the ones that are fertile.
Youth and beauty are a component of fitness. Back before we had technology, that was the best thing that we could use to determine that woman was probably
It's still one of the
pregnant,
best things
young
you
enough,
can
and
use.
healthy enough.
It's
not
still
just-
better to use than
not just-
technology.
Not just to get pregnant, but to carry that child to term and to be alive long enough to carry that baby to 18 years so that it actually goes on to be successful. That is why we picked health and beauty, for fertility, for her youth, and for her health vigor. However, in an environment where women can leverage things like wealth to freeze their eggs, they can leverage wealth to improve their fertility, a lot of these things don't matter as much. And it is possible. I don't care.
That's
by the
still
way,
not an
in the
argument against
future-
whether men would select younger, hotter women to have sex with, Erudite.
in
Well,
the
no,
future,
she's
if you're in
saying-
an environment
I
where
know what
they-
she's saying. And
She's
she's
saying-
wrong. She hasn't
Wait.
demonstrated it.
Well,
She
no,
just
no,
says that male hyenas are more attracted to bigger female hyenas
Yes,
inside
what
their
she's saying
hyena
is
brains.
what is necessary
evolution
within
can
that
change.
community is what will change it. So if the environment changes to where it's not necessary for them to select for those things anymore, then what it is that they'll actually lean towards will change over time, because that's no longer a necessary
I understand, but
component.
fertility is a huge part of this equation. A
The
and
whole
B.
point of this is that
Go
you
ahead.
don't understand how evolution
Yeah, I don't
works. I've
understand.
explained this to you multiple times.
Yeah.
Evolution changes, and
Yeah.
you asserted that the
I'm
beginning
confused.
that it
Here
has
I
to
was
happen
thinking that
is
men
the
love to
same
have sex with young, hot women. I'm fucking totally
Hold on, you
confused.
gotta let her.
Okay, I would argue to say that.
Can I just ask
Hold on.
Erudite something?
Hold on. Let NotSoErudite finish, and then we're gonna go to Angela.
Your original statement that I was pushing back on is that evolution happens over millions of years. You suggested that men selecting younger mates is this deep biological fundamental thing, and therefore it's not going to change anytime soon. I am outlining to you that all that matters is reproductive success. Fertility is one component that contributes to that. However, in a human species that is highly adaptable, in fact, the most adaptable species on the planet, who is inventing technology, it is changing the environment that it means for reproductive success, which will create evolutionary pressures to somewhat shift what people look for.
And
in
what you're
mates.
doing right now that it's my turn, is called lying and reframing. So what your initial statement had nothing to do with whether or not evolution took millions of years. That came in after your original claim, which was that technology was going to somehow stop it so that men wanted to continue to have sex with young, hot women, which is my dispute. That's my
Okay.
whole dispute.
All right, we're going to Angela now. Go ahead, Angela.
Okay, well, I'm not. Well, okay, y'all were talking on some crazy IQ level there, so I'm gonna dumb it down for the rest of us barbaric people. I'm just gonna simply outline that I would simply say, comparing us continuously back to this historical animalistic culture, sure. But at the end of the day, I think we do live in this modern era where, if you look at statistically, people aren't having kids as much. It's definitely declining. Also at marriages, so we can't continuously say that men are only having sex with younger women because they want to fucking have kids. Let's be real with that. It's convenience, and that's all I'm gonna say. And
It's why they're attracted to it. That's what we're arguing.
That's not the claim. They're talking about why it's more common, more likely to happen.
Why they're attracted to it.
But of course, this is just all averages. Of course, there's going to be some men who are going to date older women. Of course, it's going to happen. Some men are going to date women.
Yeah.
Age. We're just talking about overall, like big picture, macro averages.
But is it becoming more common for women to date younger men?
Yes, it's increasing over time.
And so why is that? Why would that change?
Okay.
I don't know. Ask Andrew. He seems to know a whole bunch about evolution. He can probably explain.
Because of what's
Alex
available. It's because of what's available in the pool.
Hold on.
Like,
I'm
this isn't
asking
hard.
Alex.
It's what's available in the pool.
All right,
So
well,
if
that's
there's
it.
less younger, hotter women available in the pool, men will settle for something different.
I
Tyler,
appreciate y'all arguing.
Because everybody needs a sugar
Alex
mama
right
when they're
now,
in
okay?
college.
Alex,
She'll buy
go
you a
ahead.
sweater, fill up your gas.
I was
tank.
just going to ask Kyla, where can I find that statistic? I want to take a look at that.
If you look up things like age hypogamy in relationships, you'll find a couple. I can send you a couple of links if you want. Like, do you want me to text
I'll
it to you?
take
or-
My point is to
Yeah,
say
that'd
that
be cool.
if presented the different option of having an older, more attractive woman or a much younger, more attractive woman, most men are going to go for the younger, more attractive woman. Of course they are. That's not disputable. Like, I don't even know why anybody would argue this.
Cool.
I was about to say, it's like and we also learned, folks, that a hyena anaconda don't want none unless you got hyena buns, hon. Apparently that's what we learned through all this. And also, to kind of really drive this point home in kind of the opposite way, the son of that billionaire who's down by the Titanic right now is about to look a lot more attractive in about 12 hours here, folks. So he's going to look a lot more attractive. Hey, Tom, I'm nothing if not topical.
Yes, well, I don't understand
Like
it.
when
but-
he's dead? Well, he's going to be dead potentially in like.
And then his son's going to go from son of billionaire to just billionaire.
Well, he's there too. His son is there with him.
Well, he's
Yeah.
got other kids that aren't there.
Hey, look,
What I
he's
read.
going to micro-evolve to want to have sex with old women. Just relax. It's all
Look,
good.
Andrew, your inability to keep up with conversation.
Yeah, I know. It's me.
Is the biggest issue.
My
in this conversation.
inability
Well, no,
to
like
get descriptors for
to kind of
reality.
come back to like that, like even if you could do some sort of like scientific intervention here, the minute those interventions are gone or any kind of overriding superstition, it's just like the pig reverting back to its own nature. Humans are just going to revert back to its own nature. Even if you were to have this sort of medical regime where people could reproduce for 200 years into their lives, and then that all goes away a million years from now, you'd be shocked within fucking like 5 years, we'd be back to kind of the paradigm that we have now with all those medical interventions.
She's saying the nature changes, though.
Yeah, the
And I'm saying it'll go right back
ability.
the minute the supervision is gone.
Okay, what I'm saying is that I have no reason to believe that the apocalypse will happen and that the pressures of technology are going to go away suddenly. I think what is going to happen in human evolution is we're going to continue to update ourselves to a new technological landscape, and that will change things. Does that mean that men are going to start picking their grandmas to date? No, I've never been arguing for that. My entire argument has been that things change over time, and that the way that psychological functions that drive selection of mate change will also be updated over time. That's reasonable to presume.
Yeah, I just quickly took
And
a look.
obviously, if the apocalypse happens, we have bigger problems, which is mostly.
I just quickly took a look at this. So across the world, the percentage of marriages with significant age gaps has decreased. However, the greatest decrease in relationships where men are older. There's been a slight increase in relationships where women are older. So Kyla is right. But again, it says no, in most age gap marriages, it is men who are older. So there's something a little bit happening there. If I take a guess why that is the case, I would probably say similar to someone who said this earlier, is that a lack of options. I think that, like
I said that.
Yeah. Okay. Andrew said that.
It's an option distinction. It's very simple. The question really becomes, if presented, all things equal and let me just ask you straight up, Kyla, if presented all things equal with a man, that they're presented with a younger, more attractive woman or an older attractive woman on average, which one do you think that they would take?
Currently, they always select the younger. I've never disputed that.
Right.
I've literally never disputed that.
Right. Instead, you wanted to go into some long discussion about microevolution and how you think that technology is going to somehow start to change that. It's not going to. No, it's an option. It's a pool problem. It's just how many are in the pool who are available. The more who are available who are young.
Hold on.
Yeah. The more who are.
Is natural selection. That's what I'm telling you. Yes, through all of
it's not.
It has been better. It has been more fit to select a younger female. And I'm saying in the future that is probably going to shift because you're trying to substantiate you keep trying to substantiate your arguments with evolution. And I'm telling you, you don't understand how evolution works.
Yeah, I understand how it works. Ask me a question about evolution. You think you want to get into an evolution debate? Let's have one.
You're in one.
We can. We've already been
We're not having one. We're having a debate literally about a mechanism, not about evolution, which is the gradual change of a species over an elongated period of time. She's talking about microevolution, which isn't even demonstrated. She just brought up, hey, there's tigers on an island that are big.
I'll actually outline this for you. If you were keeping up with evolutionary science, which I do because I fucking love evolution more than almost anything, you would know that epigenetics has overwritten any understanding of microevolution. Everything that has ever been coined microevolution is better understood through an epigenetic lens. And what I'm telling you is that epigenetics are fundamental to understanding how species in a couple of decades can change, for example, their endocrine system. That's crazy. It's really impressive. And your understanding of evolution is wrong. And you're
So hang on. Let's back up to the epigenetic argument that you're kind of putting forward. Are you saying that you actually believe that epigenetics is going to be responsible for men wanting to select for older women who are less fertile than younger women?
Nope.
Are you honestly making that claim? Because my understanding of epigenetics would be the opposite, but you go ahead, tell me.
Or do you want me to answer?
Yeah, answer.
Yeah, I never actually said that. You were
right.
basing your
That's what I
argument-
thought.
Yeah, you were basing.
So it wasn't a lack of understanding on my part at all.
Please let her
I
answer.
literally said that you didn't understand, and you keep bloviating and just asserting that you're right. Instead
I
of
am right.
You're okay. There you
And
go.
I just demonstrated that I was right, literally right now.
Just like Trump, as long as you keep saying it, I'm sure at one day it'll be true. Okay.
Andrew, do you not disagree that like monogamy is something that has developed over time within humans? That is probably...
but here's what's interesting is that there's a much more hypergamous nature to women who often go after. They don't mind nearly as much being shared by powerful men. This is also something. Now, is this epigenetic? It could be. It could be an explanation for it, or it could be that they evolved this way, over a million years, or it could be a mixture of both of these things.
Alex just gave you statistics that showed what I was suggesting might actually be occurring. I'm not saying it is, and I don't care if it is.
No. He gave you he stated statistics that backed me up. His explanation for why he thought that these statistics were the way that they were was the
Okay.
same as mine, which is
So-
that you have an X
Right,
amount of
I
limited
understand.
pool because
So-
hypergamous women go after top dominant men. So what's
So-
left over is less women available for the general population of men who are younger and hotter, so they get what they get.
So
All
what
of
my
these
statistics
things-
backed up. Oh, let me just get a word in. So what my statistic backed up is the fact that there is a trend. It's a small trend recently where men are choosing to date slightly older women than they're used to, but most couples, it's still the guy that's older. That's all. That's all my statistic.
Yes, of course. And I've never denied that, and I'm not arguing that. What I'm outlining is that your reason for why younger women were selected is based on an evolutionary argument, and I'm outlining to you that you don't understand how evolution works.
Yeah, I know. You just keep
Smaller
on saying
people-
I don't understand it, but there's nothing that you've presented that I haven't understood.
Presented
In fact, I've
multiple
thrown it
things.
right back in your face because it's incorrect. It's
Tyler,
an
maybe-
incorrect
Tyler,
understanding of
maybe
the
you could-
paradigm.
Just keep
Tyler, maybe you
saying
could
it.
specifically explain what do you think he's wrong about when it comes to.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Sure, I'll explain it again, what he's specifically wrong about. He is substantiating that when it comes to evolutionary selections and functions that are built within humankind, that it takes a process of a million years. And so that a new environmental landscape of, for example, increased fertility into later life would have no bearing on the
It's
psychological
just a straw man.
underpinnings.
You're just straw manning me again.
I'm outlining my position.
I
You
literally
stop
told you it
interrupting
was not a fundamental claim. There's more to evolution than just the gradual change over time to a species. I said that right at the outset.
What
I
words
was
do you want me
responding
to say?
specifically to your
What
claim
words
that
do you
you
want me
thought
to
that
say?
technology. I want you to speak to this. What order do you think that technology
We're going to go
is?
back to my question. And I'm gonna
Yeah,
continue
okay,
to
but
restate
you're
it
just
because-
straw manning. You're
Okay,
just
do you
straw
want me
manning.
to finish restating my position for the fourth time?
Yeah, but that you stated your position earlier and you still haven't backed off on it.
Okay, it doesn't matter that you don't want to call it a fundamental claim. If you say evolution requires millions of years to build these neurological pathways that drive what we select for in mates, it is a fundamental claim. If you don't like the word fundamental, I can say the word blah, blah, blee, blah instead to mean a system that is derived over millions of years that is essential to the neurological function of
Do you know what
selection.
the words both and the word and means? That evolution has a requirement, could be both and, not just one or other. Do you understand what those words mean? If you don't, I can use different words like beep, bop, boop, 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 boop. Will that
Depends
make
what
you
the
feel
meaning
better?
of is.
If you're talking about things like microevolution, I'm outlining to you how epigenetics and the new understanding evolution.
I know you love the word epigenetic, but when you're using it in this contextualization, you're still not applying it to how you think technology is going to make younger women or men stop wanting to have sex with younger women over older women. You still haven't demonstrated that yet, not once.
I don't need to. It's not my claim.
I don't need to, of course not.
Yes.
That
because
was
my
your claim.
No, it
That
wasn't.
was your
My-
claim.
No,
but
it wasn't. Just
it
keep
was.
saying that you're confident. What I was saying is that you don't understand evolution well enough to be backing up your argument that women will forever and always be preferring younger mates. One evidence that men are increasingly starting to prefer older or less young mates is the fact that the age gap between heterosexual partners has been steadily decreasing for hundreds of years. There used to be quite large gaps, for example, if you go back 200 years, and it's decreasing over time because, again, based on fitness and, for example,
No,
it
it's
is
just
better to
based on the
select a woman
pool.
who
It's
is
just
older.
based on the pool.
The
What are you
pool-
talking
Based
about?
on other things. You're
The
talking
pool
about times
is
like
natural selection.
they did
The
a
pool
12-year-old.
is
Generation
natural
out.
selection.
It may not be. It may not be natural selection either. Maybe it benefits us down the road. Like, you don't even know that that's natural selection. You have no idea. You're just stating it as an affirmative.
Every single environmental factor that changes the way that humans have to derive their mate selection is natural selection because it has something to do with the bearing of the fitness of success of breeding. All
It
of this
can
matters.
be. It can be natural selection. May not be. It may not be natural selection. Like,
Well,
it's
yeah,
hard to
'cause, like,
say. How do you
or-
know that it's natural selection that's causing? You don't know that.
Okay, I think at this point, I think you literally just don't understand evolution, which is
Okay,
fine
I
because
just don't.
think
You don't
believe
get it. You don't get.
I
Where's
mean-
your response? Do you have an argument, or is it just you don't get it?
All environmental factors that govern fitness of human young is changing as a result of technology, which is natural selection, and that is going to create pressures that will change how people select their mates. Does that mean that men are going to be selecting their grandmas anytime soon? I'm not arguing for that. All I'm saying
You were.
is
You
that
said micro. You said that you
saying
could see
is
that
just
through
evolution.
lions in some fucking island somewhere.
yes, that is true.
This
Thank you.
has devolved into like a
I'm
NotSoErudite
saying-
versus YouTube
We got
grudge
about
match.
2 minutes
In
left.
case of
This is
evolution,
pretty fun.
you are making a blah blah blee blah claim about the neurological correlates that have to do with mate selection, and I am telling you, you have a fundamental misunderstanding of how evolution works.
Yeah, I know. You just keep making the assertion over and over
blah,
again.
Blah blah blee blah, aka
Yeah, blah, blah, blee, blah.
slow changes over time.
Grab
And
your
it
head
turns
again.
out through epigenetics, for example, that these changes can happen very, very quickly. And so our assumption, for example, that men will forever and continue for the next 200 years to select younger mates doesn't bear out as long as technology continues as it
So
does.
let me ask you a question.
How
Let me
about
ask you a question. Is your prediction that in the next 200 years, based on what you just said, that you think that men, if they had to select between a young, beautiful woman or an older, attractive woman, are going to start moving towards the older, attractive woman? Do you honestly believe that? Just say yes.
No, that's
No,
literally
no,
what
you
I'm
don't. So just what are you even fucking talking about? It's
I'm
ridiculous.
outlining to you that you don't understand how evolution works.
I don't understand it. How many bullets do you want to bite? Not so erudite. We can do this all day.
Do you want to
Alright.
bite any bullets, for example, making me say blood, love, lead love
my.
because you're so averse to fundamentalist?
I think we should add the "you don't understand evolution"
Yeah.
as one of the phrases because
We're gonna go to closing statements. We'll let Andrew
Here.
start with. Yeah,
I'll
go ahead.
answer the question finally. I
Go
am
ahead.
certain that over the next 200 years, men are going to begin to select more on the basis of other things beside youth and beauty, as they have been since the sexual revolution, because youth and beauty have a lot less to do with fitness of young and longevity of a relationship. And as we have technological advances to allow us to select other things, yes, I believe men will increasingly select for other things, which is based. Go men.
Andrew.
Yeah, so I think that just the opposite, that regardless of technology, if you make sex robots that look young and beautiful, men will hump them too. I think that men will always try to go for always. There's literally, since the dawn of time, all of recorded history. If you can take a young, beautiful woman and present it to a man, and then an older, attractive woman, all things else equal, they're going to go for the younger, hotter woman. Now, she just got done saying in the next 200 years, she doesn't think that this will happen, and then contradicts herself in her closing statement and says over the next 200 years, she thinks it will happen. She doesn't know what the fuck she's talking about. It's midwit speak. It's just destiny midwit speak. Just they prattle, but they don't say anything. It's like, just make the point next time. You know, you save yourself some grief.
Pxie.
Okay, so basically, I think fertility is not the only factor that men select for. I think if we look at now, right, the trend that has been happening, especially for the last couple of decades, is that men are selecting, slightly younger women 2-4 years ago, but still the same age bracket. But they're getting continuously married later, right? They're getting married at 28, 30s. And this makes sense because men are interested in having their children, not just, be born, but thrive, survive, and have a better quality of life than before. And that's why when we compare every developed nation with every underdeveloped nation, we see the same pattern. We see people start having less children, but they start putting more resources into the few children that they have, right? They focus on having a woman that is not in their 20s per se, because chances are that's going to be a worse mother because they're not as developed as, let's say, a 28-year-old. That doesn't mean that fertility plays zero of a role, but that it's not the end all be all, because we want children to have happy, healthy lives that will allow them to thrive and spread more genes in the future, evolutionary speaking.
Awesome. SpeakeaZy.
Based on what you guys were just saying there, I just wanted to say, kind of off what a year day that said, I think men are just gonna always select for what's available to them because, like I said, I think women are naturally the selectors, but given the choice, men are always gonna choose the more feminine, fertile, and symmetrically pleasing women. So it's always how it's going to be. The women do the selecting, but the men select out of their choice. And if they have the choice, they're always going to choose that. It's just always how it's going to be. And I'd like to talk to you about it your date sometime, actually. But that's it.
Bill.
Well, despite the fact that we all had somewhat of a consensus at the beginning of this panel, we still found a way to make it quite contentious. Now, one thing I found kind of interesting, I was just kind of scratching my head when the idea that youth isn't necessarily something that's a selector for fitness for raising offspring. Wouldn't someone that's youthful necessarily, statistically, at least likely have more life to live? Would be kind of my thought. It's like you're probably going to live longer. That was kind of my first thought there. But like I said with the story of the pig, it took us 10,000 years to make this pink little obedient thing that does exactly what we need it to do. And the fucking minute, within 3 weeks after it's gone from all of our carefully selective animal husbandry breeding, It goes right back to its own common nature. Humans will be no different. And with that, I yield the balance of my time.
Awesome. And then Angela.
Yeah, I'll kind of whatever Phil said there about living the longest. I think it's not about living long, it's about living the best. Even with marriage, raising kids, all the above. So I think that's something that we don't really highlight too much. And also, maybe it's a good thing that God let women pick who the hell they're going to sleep with, because if men were picking, shit, all the women in the 30s and 40s would be screwed. So yeah, with that being said, I understand and I agree that they're always going to choose whatever's option, the scarcity mindset. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Alex.
Yeah, I want to use my closing to thank Tom for hosting this and everyone on the panel. Angela, it's been a very long time since we talked, so I'm glad we could finally catch up. I do think we need better topics next time because this kind of just evolved. I mean, we all agreed on pretty much everything. The second, third topic, it kind of devolved into an Andrew versus NotSoErudite grudge match, but it was interesting. You know, I enjoyed seeing that. But I do think we need topics where we have more substantial disagreements on. It seemed like the first topic we had a little bit of disagreement, but second, third topic we all largely agreed on. But yeah.
I don't know if it's the topic or is it just the panel, because I think it was like, you know, more of like a feminist versus like a less whatever. I don't know. It'd probably be a little different.
I feel like
I think the first topic would have been
this
good.
panel would be a way more fun poker game.
Yeah, our initial, like,
You're all
we
just
had
sitting
an
at the poker
initial
table.
group of people that we had selected to come onto the panel, and so many of them ended up either having to drop out or couldn't make it, to where we had to like very quickly select a whole new group of people and kind of start over. And so we had like, normally we'll build the topics first and then pick and have the people in mind for those topics at the same time so that we can kind of build it all together. And this time it didn't work out, but we ended up with a lot of disagreement. It should have been called the NotSoErudite and Andrew Shootout instead, but that's you know, we had I think.
Well, that's the whole point, right? Didn't you invite me to like create as much contention as possible? That's the whole point. Right?
I invite everybody to create as much.
The whole point of it is entertainment. I don't by the way, I don't take any of this personally from anybody. I know a lot of people take shit like this I don't take any of it personally. It doesn't bother me. So
cool. Well, yes, this is the first shootout ever. You guys were all here to witness it. I appreciate Angela and SpeakeaZy coming dressed in their cowboy stuff. Is BPF, you wear cowboy stuff literally every day, and the one time it's actually cowboy themes, the one day you don't dress like a cowboy.
I go kayaking in this, so it's perfect. So it was meant to be. I was like, yeah, bust it out.
I had like a whole thing happen right before this. My power went out and everything. So I was in the middle of making this like 30-minute. It took me like hours to make this intro for this, and I had to start over and just make it like through just something together very quickly. So yeah, I appreciate everybody joining. This ended up going really well. And
we mind if I do a shout out, and then I'm gonna get out of here, Tom.
Shout out, homie.
Okay, my name is Andrew Wilson.
OnlyFans. There you
go. Nice. No, nobody would ever want to see that. My name is Andrew Wilson, host of The Crucible. Thanks to Tomfoolery for having me on this evening. I appreciate it. I appreciate the spirited back and forth between myself and NotSoErudite. It was a lot of fun. And we, you know, at least two of us could bring some entertainment to the panel, unlike the rest of you plebs who just had to sit and listen. Anyway, have a great day. Appreciate your time. I'm going to get out of here.
Appreciate it, man. Yeah, and everybody's links are in the description as well. SpeakeaZy, you want to shout yourself out?
Yeah. Name SpeakeaZy. Escape with SpeakeaZy on YouTube. I'm not streaming there for the next 7 days, though. I'm on Rumble, same channel. Streaming for the next 7 days, but but I'll be back, motherfucker.
All right, appreciate it, man.
Go follow me there. Love y'all. Thanks for having me, Tom. Love you, buddy.
Man. Later, man. NotSoErudite.
Yeah, I'm NotSoErudite. Thanks for having me, Tom. I appreciate it.
I really appreciate you coming on. Have a good night.
Yeah, it was nice meeting you.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
You bumped me. It was nice meeting you, Phil. I think you're the only person on the panel I hadn't met, and I'm sorry I lumped you in with Andrew at the beginning. I realized that you guys had pretty different opinions. So
no, it's fine. Pleasure to make your acquaintance.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Peace.
Thank you. Phil.
Folks, it is I, the man of the hour, the man with the power, the man that makes you the podcast cower. You can, of course, find me, Phil K.O.E, at K.O.E Nation on YouTube, TikTok, Twitch, and now Twitter as well, folks. Yes, that is K.O.E Nation. K as in king. O as in, oh my God, you can find K.O.E Nation on YouTube, TikTok, Twitch, and Twitter. E is in extremely happy to know you can find K.O.E Nation on YouTube, TikTok, Twitch, and Twitter, folks. I hope you will join me there for the adventure of a lifetime. Folks, thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us. Raise a glass to yourselves, and I hope all of you make it back to the Tomfoolery Show happy, healthy, much the wiser. Tom, thank you for having me on, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Cheers.
Pxie.
Hi, I'm Pxie. You can follow me on Twitter, Pxie, and you can follow me on Instagram or Twitter, Pxie Love, PXIE LOVE. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. I like the people in general, and I hope you guys all have wonderful and lovely days.
You too.
Bye.
Later, Pxie.
She's so cute.
Alex.
Yeah, my channel's Playing with Fire. I also have a TikTok. If you have a shorter attention span, we get practical, no BS dating advice. If you're a fan of anyone on this panel, chances are I've had them on. I've had Tom on, Angela, Pxie, Andrew, I believe a few more other people. So, yeah, you can watch my long form content or you can watch my dating advice. Either or, I appreciate you. All right, cool. Thank you, Tom.
Thanks for coming, man. Have a good night.
Yeah, for sure. It was fun.
And then there was
And that's it. All right, everybody.
All right, Tom, thanks for hosting this. It was pretty badass. I still think the questions were pretty fire. I think the panel was just more of like a headbutt thing. So you did good. Won't knock you for that. And anyways, you can find me, the most neglected Asian. My parents hate me. Angela Knight 2.0 on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. I promise. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Is this your first panel that's been done like remotely?
I think so, because I'm not like truly
the Saucecast, you've been on
Yeah.
the Fresh and Fit, you've been on like a
Mhm.
bunch of other like panels where you're actually there in person. Is this the only one you've ever done that's like
I
on
think
a
so.
computer?
Yeah, it is. It is. And it's very heated. I gotta say, it's a lot more heated on here than it was in real person. Like everyone's too nice in real life. So
That's
this is
kind of
kinda
the point of it is yes, like you when you're kind of separated from each other, you're able to get a lot more heated because you don't have any sort of like fear of personal interaction in those cases. So
Yeah, but unfortunately, I was too dumb for some of the people here. So I was like, oh, yeah, you guys, I barely graduated high school. This is too much for me. I
Well-
gotta do more homework, more reading, more studying.
maybe you'll be smarter next time.
Yeah, I'll figure it out. I'll make you happy next time.
Thanks, Angela. Have a good night.
All right. Later, Tom. Bye-bye.
And then also there's NevTheRobot. So if you guys want to go follow any of these people, all of these honest, hardworking Americans, and I think a couple of them might be some kind of Canadian or some crap like that. But yeah, go follow them on their platforms or whatever.